"Where is Jungkook?" Jimin whispered, his voice cracking before his eyes were even fully open. The hospital room went silent. RM froze near the door. Jin stopped breathing for a second. Suga looked down like he already knew this moment would come. And Jungkook, the one person Jimin was asking for, was not there. Before we go deeper into this story, tell me in the comments where you were watching from. And be honest, if you woke up in a hospital and the first person you wanted was the one who disappeared, would you forgive them? Or would you ask what they were hiding? Jimin tried to move, but pain shot through his body so fast his hand gripped the white hospital sheet. His throat felt dry. His head was heavy. The room smelled like medicine, rain, and fear. Outside the window, Seoul was covered in gray morning light. But inside that room, nobody looked relieved that he was awake. They looked guilty. Taehyung stood closest to the bed, eyes red like he had not slept all night. Jikook kept rubbing his hands together, forcing a smile that failed every time. Jin was pretending to be calm, but his jaw was tight. RM stepped forward carefully, like one wrong word could break the whole room apart. Jimin looked from one face to another, searching for the only face missing. "I asked you something," he said, weaker this time, but sharper. "Where is Jungkook?" Nobody answered, and that silence told Jimin one thing before anyone said it out loud. Something had happened between them while he was unconscious. Something bad. Something the members had already decided not to tell him. RM finally pulled the chair closer to Jimin's bed, but he did not sit down. That made Jimin even more anxious, because RM always sat when he was about to explain something difficult. This time he stayed standing, both hands locked together in front of him, eyes moving from the IV line on Jimin's arm to the bruised skin near his wrist. "Jimin," RM said quietly, "you need to rest first." Jimin gave a weak laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Rest?" His voice was rough, almost broken. "I woke up with all of you staring at me like someone died, and Jungkook is missing. Don't tell me to rest." Jin stepped forward fast. "Nobody died." The answer came too quickly, too clean. Jimin turned his head toward Jin, and even that small movement made him wince. "Then why did you say it like that?" Jin's face changed. Just for 1 second, the older member looked scared. Suga noticed it and looked away. Taehyung swallowed hard. Jikook closed his eyes like he wished he could leave the room. Jimin's heartbeat monitor began to beep faster. RM looked at the machine, then back at him. "Your body is still weak. The doctor said you may remember things in pieces. We don't want to shock you." Jimin stared at him. "You're already shocking me." The words landed coldly in the room. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jimin whispered, "Was Jungkook with me?" The question was simple, but it hit every member like a blade. Taehyung's fingers curled around the edge of the bed rail. Jin turned his face toward the window. Jikook's forced calm disappeared completely. RM inhaled slowly. "Yes," he said. Jimin's eyes sharpened. "Where?" RM did not answer fast enough. That was all Jimin needed. "He was there when it happened." His voice grew unsteady. "Wasn't he?" Suga finally spoke from the corner. "Jimin, don't push yourself." Jimin turned to him, hurt cutting through the exhaustion. "Don't do that! Don't talk to me like I'm a child!" Suga's face tightened, but he said nothing. Jimin's fingers trembled against the blanket. "Tell me what happened." RM looked at the others as if asking permission. That made Jimin angrier than any answer could have. "Why are you looking at them?" he demanded. "It happened to me." The room fell into another silence. RM finally pulled the chair closer to Jimin's bed, but he did not sit down. That made Jimin even more anxious, because RM always sat when he was about to explain something difficult. This time he stayed standing, both hands locked together in front of him, eyes moving from the IV line on Jimin's arm to the bruised skin near his wrist. "Jimin," RM said quietly, "you need to rest first." Jimin gave a weak laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Rest?" His voice was rough, almost broken. I woke up with all of you staring at me like someone died, and Jungkook is missing. Don't tell me to rest." Jin stepped forward fast. "Nobody died." The answer came too quickly, too clean. Jimin turned his head toward Jin, and even that small movement made him wince. "Then why did you say it like that?" Jin's face changed. Just for 1 second, the older member looked scared. Suga noticed it and looked away. Taehyung swallowed hard. J-Hope closed his eyes like he wished he could leave the room. Jimin's heartbeat monitor began to beep faster. RM looked at the machine, then back at him. "Your body is still weak. The doctor said you may remember things in pieces. We don't want to shock you." Jimin stared at him. "You're already shocking me." The words landed coldly in the room. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jimin whispered, "Was Jungkook with me?" The question was simple, but it hit every member like a blade. Taehyung's fingers curled around the edge of the bed rail. Jin turned his face toward the window. J-Hope's forced calm disappeared completely. RM inhaled slowly. "Yes," he said. Jimin's eyes sharpened. "Where?" RM did not answer fast enough. That was all Jimin needed. "He was there when it happened." His voice grew unsteady. "Wasn't he?" Suga finally spoke from the corner. "Jimin, don't push yourself." Jimin turned to him, hurt cutting through the exhaustion. "Don't do that! Don't talk to me like I'm a child!" Suga's face tightened, but he said nothing. Jimin's fingers trembled against the blanket. "Tell me what happened." RM looked at the others as if asking permission. That made Jimin angrier than any answer could have. "Why are you looking at them?" he demanded. "It happened to me." The room fell into another silence, heavier than before. Then Taehyung's voice broke through it, low and almost shaking. "You collapsed after the private rehearsal." Jimin blinked. "Collapsed?" Taehyung nodded, but his eyes were full of something worse than worry. "There was an argument first." Jimin's gaze locked on him. "With who?" Taehyung looked down. Jimin already knew. Still, hearing the silence confirm it hurt more than the pain in his body. "With Jungkook," Jimin said. Nobody denied it. Outside the room, footsteps passed in the hallway. A nurse's cart rattled by. Life continued outside, normal and careless, while Jimin's world started splitting open inside a hospital room. He tried to search his memory. Rehearsal lights, sweat, music stopping too suddenly. Jungkook's face. Jungkook saying something sharp. Or maybe Jimin had said it first. A door slamming, a hand reaching for him. Rain against glass. Then darkness. Jimin pressed his eyes shut. "What did we fight about?" This time Jin answered, and his voice was too soft. "You don't remember." Jimin opened his eyes again. "If I remembered, I wouldn't be asking." RM's expression tightened. "The company wants us to wait before discussing details." Jimin stared at him like he heard wrong. "The company?" He tried to sit up again, and the monitor screamed faster. J-Hope moved toward him. "Jimin, please." "No!" Jimin pushed his hand away, not harshly, but enough to stop him. "I'm in a hospital bed. I don't know what happened to me. Jungkook is gone, and now you're telling me the company is deciding what I'm allowed to know?" His breath shook. "Am I a member or a problem to manage?" That sentence broke something in the room. RM looked wounded. Jin's eyes went wet. Taehyung stepped back like he had been hit. Suga's face stayed calm, but his hands were clenched. J-Hope whispered, "You're not a problem." Jimin looked at him. "Then why does everyone look like they're hiding one?" Before anyone could answer, the door opened. A manager entered with a tablet in his hand and 2 staff members behind him. The moment Jimin saw them, the air changed again. The members straightened. RM's face hardened. Jin moved closer to Jimin's bed almost instinctively. The manager forced a polite smile. "Jimin-see, you're awake. That's a relief." Jimin did not smile back. "Where is Jungkook?" The manager paused. Only a small pause, but Jimin caught it. "Jungkook is resting separately." Jimin's eyes narrowed. "Separately where?" "For now, it's better if you focus on recovery." Jimin looked at RM. "Is that the official answer?" RM did not speak. The manager stepped closer.
There are rumors already spreading online. We need to control the situation before it becomes bigger. Jimin's face went pale, but not from illness. Rumors about what? The manager glanced at the members. There was footage. The room went dead still. Jimin's voice dropped. What footage? The manager tapped the tablet, then hesitated. A short clip from outside the rehearsal building. It shows Jungkook leaving in the rain before the ambulance arrived. Jimin's heart seemed to stop. Leaving? His lips barely moved. He left me? Taehyung immediately shook his head. That's not the whole story. The manager cut in. But that is what the public will see. Jimin looked around the room, waiting for someone to correct it, to say Jungkook did not leave, to say it was a misunderstanding, to say the person he asked for first had not walked away when he was on the floor. No one gave him that answer fast enough. The silence did the damage before the truth arrived. Jimin slowly turned his face toward the ceiling. His eyes filled, but he refused to let the tears fall. "Get out," he whispered. The manager stiffened. "Jimin, we need to discuss. Get out." This time his voice was stronger. Jin turned toward the manager. "You heard him." The staff hesitated, but RM stepped in front of them, calm and firm. "Leave. Now." The manager's expression changed from concern to frustration, but he backed away. "This isn't over." Suga finally looked up. "It never is with you people." The door closed. For the first time, Jimin let the tears slip down the side of his face. He did not sob. He did not cover his mouth. He just stared upward while everything he didn't remember began hurting him anyway. Taehyung moved closer again. "Jimina." Jimin spoke without looking at him. "Did Jungkook really leave?" Taehyung opened his mouth, but RM stopped him with one quiet look. Jimin sighed. "Don't," his voice cracked. "Don't you dare protect me by lying." RM looked destroyed. "We are trying to protect everyone." Jimin turned his head slowly. "That's not an answer." Suga came forward at last. His voice was low, steady, but heavy. "Jungkook left the building, yes." Jimin's face changed. Something in his eyes went empty. Suga continued before the wound could become permanent. "But he came back." Jimin froze. "What?" "He came back," Suga repeated. "Before the ambulance took you. He was the one holding you when we found you." Jimin's breath caught. Jin looked sharply at Suga, as if that truth had agreed to stay hidden. Suga ignored him. He was shaking so badly he couldn't even speak. Jimin's eyes searched Suga's face. "Then why isn't he here?" Suga looked away for the first time. "Because he thinks you don't want him here." The words entered.
By noon, the hospital room no longer felt like a place for healing. It felt like a locked room in the middle of a storm. Outside the door, security had doubled. Staff whispered in the corridor. Phones kept vibrating, but nobody wanted to answer them in front of Jimin. That made everything worse. Every time RM stepped aside to take a call, every time Jin opened a message and looked away, every time J-Hope tried to smile and failed, Jimin understood one thing clearly. The world outside already knew a version of his pain before he did. He asked for his phone 5 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely. "Give me my phone." Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. "No." Jimin stared at him. "Hyung." "No." "I'm not a kid." Jin's voice cracked. "Then stop asking me to hand you a knife." Jimin went quiet. J-Hope, standing near the window, looked down immediately. Taehyung's eyes flicked toward the door. Suga leaned against the wall, silent, but his gaze was fixed on Jimin like he was waiting for the explosion. Jimin swallowed. "Is it that bad?" Nobody answered. He laughed once, bitter and low. "You guys are terrible at hiding things." RM came back into the room with his phone in his hand. His face looked older than it had that morning. "We need to make a statement soon." Jimin turned to him. "About me?" RM nodded. "About you, Jungkook, and the rehearsal incident." "Incident," Jimin repeated. The word tasted wrong, too clean for something that had left him in a hospital bed. "That's what we're calling it?" RM's jaw tightened. "That's what legal wants us to call it."
Jimin stared at him. And what do you want to call it? RM did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, a failure. The room shifted. Jimin's anger softened for 1 second because RM did not sound like a leader managing a crisis. He sounded like a brother blaming himself. But Jimin could not afford to feel sorry for anyone yet, not when his own memories were missing. He asked for his phone for 17 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely, "Give me my phone." Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung, no. I'm not a kid. Jin's voice cracked. Then stop asking me to hand you a knife. Jimin went quiet. J-Hope, standing near the window, looked down immediately. Taehyung's eyes flicked toward the door. Suga leaned against the wall, silent, but his gaze was fixed on Jimin like he was waiting for the explosion. Jimin swallowed. Is it that bad? Nobody answered. He laughed once, bitter and low. You guys are terrible at hiding things. RM came back into the room with his phone in his hand. His face looked older than it had that morning. We need to make a statement soon. Jimin turned to him. About me? RM nodded. About you, Jungkook, and the rehearsal incident. Incident, Jimin repeated. The word tasted wrong, too clean for something that had left him in a hospital bed. That's what we're calling it? RM's jaw tightened. That's what legal wants us to call it. Jimin stared at him. And what do you want to call it? RM did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, a failure. The room shifted. Jimin's anger softened for 1 second because RM did not sound like a leader managing a crisis. He sounded like a brother blaming himself. But Jimin could not afford to feel sorry for anyone yet, not when his own memories were missing. He asked for his phone for 17 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely, Give me my phone. Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung, no. I'm not a kid. Jin's voice cracked. Then stop asking me to hand you a knife. Jimin went quiet. J-Hope, standing near the window, looked down immediately. Taehyung's eyes flicked toward the door. Suga leaned against the wall, silent, but his gaze was fixed on Jimin like he was waiting for the explosion. Jimin swallowed. Is it that bad? Nobody answered. He laughed once, bitter and low. You guys are terrible at hiding things. RM came back into the room with his phone in his hand. His face looked older than it had that morning. We need to make a statement soon. Jimin turned to him. About me? RM nodded. About you, Jungkook, and the rehearsal incident. Incident, Jimin repeated. The word tasted wrong, too clean for something that had left him in a hospital bed. That's what we're calling it? RM's jaw tightened. That's what legal wants us to call it. Jimin stared at him. And what do you want to call it? RM did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, a failure. The room shifted. Jimin's anger softened for 1 second because RM did not sound like a leader managing a crisis. He sounded like a brother blaming himself. But Jimin could not afford to feel sorry for anyone yet, not when his own memories were missing. He asked for his phone for 17 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely, Give me my phone. Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung, no. I'm not a kid. Jin's voice cracked. Then stop asking me to hand you a knife. Jimin went quiet. J-Hope, standing near the window, looked down immediately. Taehyung's eyes flicked toward the door. Suga leaned against the wall, silent, but his gaze was fixed on Jimin like he was waiting for the explosion. Jimin swallowed. Is it that bad? Nobody answered. He laughed once, bitter and low. You guys are terrible at hiding things. RM came back into the room with his phone in his hand. His face looked older than it had that morning. We need to make a statement soon. Jimin turned to him. About me? RM nodded. About you, Jungkook, and the rehearsal incident. Incident, Jimin repeated. The word tasted wrong, too clean for something that had left him in a hospital bed. That's what we're calling it? RM's jaw tightened. That's what legal wants us to call it. Jimin stared at him. And what do you want to call it? RM did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, a failure. The room shifted. Jimin's anger softened for 1 second because RM did not sound like a leader managing a crisis. He sounded like a brother blaming himself. But Jimin could not afford to feel sorry for anyone yet, not when his own memories were missing. He asked for his phone for 17 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely. Give me my phone. Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung, no. I'm not a kid. Jin's voice cracked. Then stop asking me to hand you a knife. Jimin went quiet. J-Hope, standing near the window, looked down immediately. Taehyung's eyes flicked toward the door. Suga leaned against the wall, silent, but his gaze was fixed on Jimin like he was waiting for the explosion. Jimin swallowed. Is it that bad? Nobody answered. He laughed once, bitter and low. You guys are terrible at hiding things. RM came back into the room with his phone in his hand. His face looked older than it had that morning. We need to make a statement soon. Jimin turned to him. About me? RM nodded. About you, Jungkook, and the rehearsal incident. Incident, Jimin repeated. The word tasted wrong. Too clean for something that had left him in a hospital bed. That's what we're calling it? RM's jaw tightened. That's what legal wants us to call it. Jimin stared at him. And what do you want to call it? RM did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, a failure. The room shifted. Jimin's anger softened for 1 second because RM did not sound like a leader managing a crisis. He sounded like a brother blaming himself. But Jimin could not afford to feel sorry for anyone yet, not when his own memories were missing. He asked for his phone for 17 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely. Give me my phone. Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung, no. I'm not a kid. Jin's voice cracked. Then stop asking me to hand you a knife. Jimin went quiet. J-Hope, standing near the window, looked down immediately. Taehyung's eyes flicked toward the door. Suga leaned against the wall, silent, but his gaze was fixed on Jimin like he was waiting for the explosion. Jimin swallowed. Is it that bad? Nobody answered. He laughed once, bitter and low. You guys are terrible at hiding things. RM came back into the room with his phone in his hand. His face looked older than it had that morning. We need to make a statement soon. Jimin turned to him. About me? RM nodded. About you, Jungkook, and the rehearsal incident. Incident, Jimin repeated. The word tasted wrong. Too clean for something that had left him in a hospital bed. That's what we're calling it? RM's jaw tightened. That's what legal wants us to call it. Jimin stared at him. And what do you want to call it? RM did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, a failure. The room shifted. Jimin's anger softened for 1 second because RM did not sound like a leader managing a crisis. He sounded like a brother blaming himself. But Jimin could not afford to feel sorry for anyone yet, not when his own memories were missing. He asked for his phone for 17 times. Nobody gave it to him. On the 6th time, he stopped asking politely. Give me my phone. Jin sat beside him, arms crossed, pretending to be stubborn because being worried would show too much. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung, no. I'm not a kid. Jin's voice cracked. Then stop asking me to...
The photo spread faster than the truth could breathe. By afternoon, every phone in the room had become a threat. Notifications flashed and disappeared. Staff came in with updates they could barely say out loud. Outside the hospital, fans had started gathering, some crying, some angry, some holding signs with Jimin's name, some with Jungkook's. It should have felt like love. Instead, from where Jimin lay, it felt like the world was choosing sides in a story none of them understood. Jungkook outside Jimin's apartment 2 nights ago. That was the headline. That was enough for people to invent 100 endings. Some said Jungkook had been stalking him, some said Jimin had called him. Some said they had been fighting for weeks. Some said the group was breaking apart. The cruelest ones said Jungkook's silence proved guilt. Jimin listened to RM explain it, and each sentence made his face colder. "Where is he?" Jimin asked again. This time the question was not weak, it was a command. RM rubbed his forehead. "He's at a secure location." "That is not an answer." "It's the only one I can give right now." Jimin pushed the blanket away. Jin immediately stood. "What are you doing?" "Leaving." "You can barely stand." "Then help me." Jin looked furious. "Absolutely not." Jimin swung his legs toward the side of the bed anyway. Pain hit him so sharply his vision blurred, but he clenched his jaw and refused to lie back down. The monitor beeped fast. J-Hope rushed forward. "Jimin, stop, please!" "No!" His voice shook, but he kept moving. "I'm not staying here while people destroy him." Taehyung grabbed the bed rail. "And what about you? You were unconscious a few hours ago." Jimin looked at him with tears in his eyes, but his voice stayed hard. "I know what it feels like to be abandoned by a story someone else wrote about you. I won't let that happen to him." Suga stepped in front of him. "You go outside like this and the story gets worse. Then bring him here." RM's face tightened. "He refuses." "What?" J-Hope looked down. Jin turned away. Taehyung's eyes filled again. Suga exhaled through his nose, angry but controlled. RM said, "Jungkook said he won't come until you ask for him after you remember everything." The words cut deeper than Jimin expected. "That's ridiculous." Suga's voice sharpened. "He thinks he caused this." Jimin looked at him. "Did he?" Suga did not flinch. "No." "Then why is everyone treating him like he did?" "Because Jungkook is good at taking blame that doesn't belong to him," Suga said, "and you are good at hiding pain until it becomes someone else's emergency." The sentence landed brutally. Jimin stared at him. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Jimin looked away first. Suga had not said it to hurt him. That made it worse. RM's phone rang again. He rejected the call. It rang again immediately. This time Jin snapped, "Answer it or throw it away." RM answered. He listened for 3 seconds and his whole body changed. "Put him through." Jimin's eyes lifted. "Who?" RM did not answer. He just put the phone on speaker. For a second there was static. Then a voice came through, low, breathless, familiar enough to make Jimin's fingers tremble. "Hung." "Jungkook." Nobody moved. Jimin stared at the phone like it was a person. Jungkook's voice sounded rough, like he had been running or crying or both. "Is he awake?" RM looked at Jimin. "He is." Silence. Then Jungkook breathed out and the sound almost broke. "Is he okay?" Jimin's lips parted, but no words came. He had asked for Jungkook all morning. Now that he heard him, anger, relief, fear, and hurt crashed together so hard he could not separate them. RM said carefully, "You can ask him yourself." Another silence. Longer. Heavier. Jungkook's voice came back smaller. "No." Jimin flinched. Taehyung looked at the phone like he wanted to scream. Jin closed his eyes. J-Hope covered his mouth. RM's face hardened. "Jungkook." "No, Hung." Jungkook's voice shook. "Not until he remembers." Jimin finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I'm here." The line went silent. When Jungkook answered, his voice was almost gone. "Jimin." Hearing his name like that made Jimin's chest ache, not because it was soft, because it was full of guilt. "Why won't you come?" Jimin asked. Jungkook breathed unsteadily. "Because the last thing you said to me was to stay away." Jimin shut his eyes. "I was angry." "You were scared." Jimin opened his eyes. That hit something true. "What do you know?" Jungkook did not answer. Jimin's hand gripped the sheet. "Jungkook, what do you know?" RM leaned closer to the phone. "Tell us where you are." Jungkook ignored him. "Did you see the photo?" Jimin looked at the others. "They told me." Jungkook laughed once, but it sounded broken. "Of course they did." Jin's tone sharpened. "Watch it." Jungkook's voice hardened for the first time. "No, Hung, I'm done watching everyone decide what Jimin can handle." Jimin felt the room tense. RM said, "That's not fair. None of this is fair." Jungkook's breathing got heavier.
Someone followed him, someone got into his phone, someone knew where I was before I did, and instead of telling me, he pushed me away. Jimin's stomach dropped. You knew about the threats? Silence. Jungkook cursed softly under his breath. That was the answer. Jimin's voice became very quiet. How? Jungkook did not speak. Suga looked at RM, then at the phone. Jungkook, answer him. Jungkook finally said, because I saw the message. Jimin's face went white. When? 2 nights ago, at your apartment. The room became colder. Jimin's mind flashed again. His apartment door half open. Jungkook standing in the hallway. Jimin holding his phone too tightly. Jungkook asking, who sent that? Jimin shouting, why are you here? Jungkook stepping closer. Jimin hiding the screen. Jungkook looking hurt, not because of the yelling, but because Jimin had been dealing with fear alone. Back in the hospital room, Jimin whispered, that's why you came. Jungkook's voice softened. You weren't answering anyone. I got worried. Jin sat down slowly, his anger melting into dread. J-Hope's eyes filled. Taehyung looked like he had just realized the story was worse than any rumor. RM asked, what did the message say? Jungkook stayed quiet. Jimin's pulse spiked. Don't. Everyone looked at him. Jimin swallowed, shaking his head. Don't say it. RM turned to him. Jimin, if someone is threatening you, we need to know. Jimin whispered, you don't understand. Suga stepped closer. Then make us understand. Jungkook spoke before Jimin could. It wasn't just about him. Jimin closed his eyes. Jungkook! They had something on all of us. RM went still. Jin looked up slowly. J-Hope's face lost color. Taehyung. What? Jungkook's voice dropped. The message said if Jimin kept me cut off, they would release private footage from inside the dorm, edited clips, old conversations, things that could be twisted. RM's hand tightened around the phone. Who has access to that? Nobody answered because everyone knew the answer was terrible. Not a random fan, not a paparazzi hiding outside, someone close enough to touch their private life, someone close enough to know exactly where to hurt them. Jimin's breathing became uneven. I thought if I made you hate me, they would stop. Jungkook's voice broke. I could never hate you. The words hung there, simple and devastating. Jimin looked down, tears dropping onto the hospital sheet. For the first time since waking up, he didn't try to hide them. RM's expression changed. The leader in him was calculating danger. The brother in him was breaking. Jungkook, RM said slowly. Where are you? Another pause. Then Jungkook said, I can't tell you. Suga's eyes narrowed. Why not? Jungkook's voice became tight. Because I think I found who leaked it. Everyone froze. Jimin looked up. What? Jungkook breathed hard into the phone. And if I'm right, they're not outside the company. The line crackled. RM stepped closer. Jungkook, listen to me. Do not confront anyone alone. Jungkook did not respond. Jimin's voice shook. Jungkook, where are you? For a second, only his breathing filled the room. Then Jungkook said quietly, I'm sorry. The call ended. Jimin stared at the phone in RM's hand. Nobody spoke. Then the hospital lights flickered once, just enough for everyone to look up. A second later, RM received a message from an unknown number. He opened it. His face turned to stone. Jin moved beside him. What is it? RM read the message out loud, his voice low and cold. If Jungkook keeps digging, the next one won't be a clip. It'll be Jimin's full secret.
Jimin heard the words, Jimin's full secret, and felt something inside him shut down. Not because the threat was new, because it had finally entered the room where everyone could see it. Until that moment, he could still pretend the danger belonged to blurry memories, private messages, and the dark corners of his phone. Now it was on RM's screen. Now it was in Jin's horrified eyes, in Taehyung's trembling hands, in J-Hope's silence, in Suga's sudden stillness. Now it belonged to all of them. RM lowered the phone slowly. What secret? Jimin did not answer. He looked away. That small movement told them more than denial ever could. Jin's voice softened, but there was fear underneath it. Jimina. Jimin shook his head. Not here. Suga studied him. So there is something. J-Hope turned sharply. Hyung. Suga did not back down. We don't have time to be gentle if someone is using it to control him. Jimin's eyes flashed. You think I don't know that? His voice cracked with frustration. You think I wanted this? The monitor began to beep faster again. Jin reached for him, but Jimin pulled his hand back. Just don't look at me like that. Taehyung stepped forward carefully. Like what? Jimin laughed, bitter and tired, like I'm about to disappoint you. That broke Taehyung. You could never disappoint me. Jimin looked at him with tears in his eyes. You don't know that. The room went quiet. Outside, someone argued in the hallway with security. A camera flash burst against the narrow window in the door, then disappeared. Jin turned immediately, furious. Are they already on this floor? RM walked to the door and checked through the small glass panel. 2 guards were pushing someone back. A healthcare staff member looked panicked. The world was closing in. RM turned back. We need to move him. J-Hope nodded quickly. Private wing? Too obvious, Suga said. They'll expect that. Jin looked at RM. Then where? RM's gaze moved to Jimin. Somewhere only we know. Jimin understood the look. The old practice studio. Not the new building. Not the polished rooms with cameras and staff schedules. The old basement studio where they used to stay after hours when they were younger, when fame felt far away and exhaustion felt normal. The place they had promised never to use for hiding, because hiding meant something was wrong. Jimin's voice was barely audible. No. RM stepped closer. It's safe. No place is safe if someone inside is doing this. Suga nodded once. He's right. Jim looked at him. Then what do we do? Suga's gaze went to RM's phone. We stop reacting. We set a trap. J-Hope stared at him. A trap? The person threatening us knows our movements, our old spaces, maybe our staff routines. If we move Jimin quietly and leak a false location through only one channel, we see who follows. RM's expression sharpened, but Jin immediately snapped. Absolutely not. We are not using Jimin as bait. Suga's voice stayed calm. He already is bait. The difference is whether we admit it. Jin moved toward him. Say that again. J-Hope stepped between them. Stop! Not here! Jimin watched them fighting over him, and the shame hit harder than the fear. This was what he had tried to prevent. The members turning on each other. Jungkook running alone. RM carrying decisions nobody should have to carry. Jin protecting everyone until his own anger became a wall. Suga saying cruel truths because nobody else would. J-Hope trying to keep broken pieces from cutting each other. Taehyung looking at Jimin like he was afraid one wrong breath would make him disappear again. Jimin closed his eyes. I'll do it. Everyone turned to him. Jin's face darkened. No. Jimin looked at him. I said I'll do it. You're injured. I'm awake. That doesn't mean you're okay. Jimin's voice lowered. I haven't been okay for weeks. That stopped Jin cold. The confession sat in the room, quiet and brutal. RM's eyes changed. Weeks? Jimin looked at his hands. The first message came 3 weeks ago. J-Hope whispered, 3 weeks? Taehyung looked wounded. Why didn't you tell us? Jimin's answer came out fast, defensive, honest. Because every message came with proof. RM's voice was careful. Proof of what? Jimin swallowed. That they were close, that they could reach us. Photos in hallways that were supposed to be private. Screenshots of schedules before managers announced them. Recordings of conversations that happened in rooms with no cameras. Jin's face went pale. That's impossible. Suga's eyes hardened. No, it's not. RM looked at him. You suspected? Suga hesitated. That hesitation became another secret.
Jimin noticed. Yoongi-hyung. Suga's jaw tightened. I noticed a file missing from the archive server last month. RM turned fully toward him. You didn't tell me? I reported it to security. You didn't tell us? Suga's voice snapped for the first time, because they told me it was a system error. RM stared at him. And you believed that? Suga's eyes flashed. No, but I didn't have proof. Jin rubbed both hands over his face. Great. Perfect. So we have a leak, a stalker, a hacker, and Jungkook running around like he's in an action movie. He's not running around, Taehyung said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. Taehyung's face changed, guilt rising before he spoke. RM's eyes narrowed. What did you do? Taehyung swallowed. I gave him a car. Jin exploded. You what? Taehyung flinched but stood his ground. He was going to leave anyway. RM's voice went dangerously calm. When? Taehyung looked down. Before we came here. You knew he was going after the leaker? Taehyung looked down. He said he had a lead. Jimin's chest tightened. What lead? Taehyung looked at him, then away. He said someone from the night staff accessed the rehearsal floor before the clip was posted. RM cursed under his breath. Name. Taehyung headed his head. He didn't tell me. Suga looked toward the door. Then we find him before he finds them. Jimin pulled the IV line slightly as he tried to stand again. Jin reached for him, but this time Jimin did not pull away. He looked at Jin with a tired, pleading expression. Hyung, please. Jin froze. Jimin's voice broke. I know you want to protect me, but if Jungkook gets hurt because I stayed quiet, I won't be able to live with that. Jin's anger collapsed into pain. He looked at RM. We moved together. RM nodded slowly. No one goes alone. J-Hope wiped his face quickly and forced himself into motion. I'll get clothes, something with a hood. Suga said, I'll call the driver we trust, not company transport. Taehyung stepped closer to Jimin. I'll contact Jungkook. RM shook his head. No, he might be watched. Jimin looked up. Then use my phone. Everyone went still. Jin said carefully, Your phone is evidence. Exactly. Jimin's face hardened with a kind of courage that looked almost dangerous. You want to send a message. Suga's mouth circled slightly, not to a smile, but recognition. You want to send a message. Jimin nodded. RM looked at him. What message? Jimin held out his hand. For a second, nobody moved. Then RM took Jimin's phone from the drawer and placed it in his palm. The screen lit up with dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, and one unknown notification sitting at the top like it had been waiting for him to wake up. Jimin opened it. The message was short. Stop asking for Jungkook. He is the reason this happened. Jimin stared at the words. His hand trembled once, then steadied. He typed slowly, with every member watching. You should have known better to use him against me. He pressed send. The room seemed to hold its breath. 10 seconds passed, then 20. Then the reply came. No one spoke as Jimin opened it. The message said, Then you should have protected your secret better. Attached below it was a video file. Jimin's face drained of color. RM stepped closer. Don't open it. But Jimin already knew what it was. The hospital room, the members, the rain, the fear, all disappeared for 1 second as the past he had tried to bury rushed back. His thumb hovered over the screen. Jungkook was out there chasing a monster. The members were finally standing beside him, and the person behind everything had just put the knife in his hand and dared him to cut himself open. Jimin looked at RM, eyes full of fear and decision. If I show you this, he whispered, nothing goes back to how it was.
The video file sat on Jimin's phone like it had weight. Nobody touched him now. Nobody told him to calm down. Nobody even breathed too loudly, because they all understood that whatever was inside that file had already controlled Jimin for weeks. It had made him push Jungkook away. It had made him lie to his brothers. It had led him to that rehearsal room, to that argument, to the hospital bed, where he had woken up asking for the one person everyone thought he had rejected. RM's eyes stayed on Jimin's face, not the phone, because he could tell the screen was not the most dangerous thing in the room. Jimin's fear was. "You don't have to open it right now," RM said carefully. Jimin gave a small, empty laugh. "That's what I kept telling myself every time they sent something. Not right now. Later. After practice. After the schedule. After everyone sleeps." And then later became 3 weeks. Jin sat beside him, close but not touching, like he was afraid even comfort might feel like pressure. "Then don't do it alone this time." Jimin looked at him, and for a second the wall around him cracked. He was tired. Not sleepy tired. Not injured tired. He looked like someone who had been holding a door shut, while something on the other side kept pushing harder. J-Hope moved to the window and pulled the curtain tighter, even though there was nothing to see except rain and security lights. Taehyung stood near the door, phone in his hand, fighting the urge to call Jungkook again. Suga watched the hallway through the small glass panel, his face unreadable, but one hand was already inside his jacket pocket where he kept his own phone, ready to record or call or fight with words if needed. RM lowered his voice. "Before we open it, we need rules," Jimin blinked. "Rules?" "Yes," RM said, "because whoever sent this knows how to make us react. They want panic. They want shame. They want us to turn on each other before we understand the whole picture. So we make rules first." Jin nodded slowly, catching on. "No one leaves alone." Suga added, "No one answers unknown calls without recording." J-Hope said, "No one talks to company staff unless at least 2 of us are present." Taehyung's voice was quiet but firm. "And no one keeps secrets to protect the others." That one landed directly on Jimin. He looked down. Taehyung immediately softened. "I don't mean it like that." Jimin nodded once. "No, you do, and you're right." The room went still again, but this silence was different. It was not fear. It was a line being drawn. RM looked at Jimin's phone. "The last rule is the hardest. We do not let the person threatening us decide what this secret means." Jimin's thumb hovered over the file. "You don't know what it is." RM answered without hesitation. "I know who you are." Jimin's eyes filled before he could stop it. For weeks, every threat had made him feel like one exposed piece of his life could erase everything else about him. One edited file. One old mistake. One private confession. One vulnerable moment stolen from context. That was all it took in the world they lived in. The public did not always ask what was true. Sometimes they only asked what was loud. Jimin swallowed hard and pressed play. The video opened in darkness. At first there was only grainy footage, shaky and low quality, like someone had filmed a screen showing another recording. Then a room appeared. Not the dorm. Not the company. A small practice room from years ago, one they had rented privately before a major tour. Jimin recognized it immediately. His stomach dropped. So did RM's face. Jin leaned closer, confused at first, then tense as the memory returned. The angle was high, from a corner, hidden. The date stamp was old, years old. In the video, younger Jimin sat alone on the floor, knees pulled close to his chest, breathing fast. He looked thinner, exhausted, not like an idol resting after practice, but like someone trying not to break where anyone could see. The door opened. Jungkook entered. Younger Jungkook, still broad-shouldered, but with a softer face, eyes wide with fear as he rushed toward Jimin. The audio was rough, but his voice came through. "Hyung, why didn't you call me?" Younger Jimin shook his head hard. "Go away." "No. I said go away." Jungkook knelt in front of him. "You're shaking." On the hospital bed, present-day Jimin shut his eyes. Jin covered his mouth. J-Hope looked like he had been punched. Taehyung whispered, "Who filmed this?" Nobody answered. The video continued. Younger Jimin tried to stand. Failed. And Jungkook caught him before he hit the floor. The moment was not scandalous. It was not shameful. It was not anything the world had the right to see. It was private pain. It was trust. It was a young man falling apart, and another young man refusing to let him fall alone. Then the video cut abruptly, not to the whole truth, but to a shorter, twisted fragment. Younger Jimin saying through tears, "Don't tell the others." Younger Jungkook answering, "Then let me be the only one who knows." The file ended there. The hospital room was silent. The threat was clear now. Whoever had this footage could make it look like a secret relationship, a breakdown, a betrayal, an obsession, anything they wanted. Not because the footage proved it, but because people could be taught to see whatever destroyed someone fastest. Jimin opened his eyes slowly. "That night," he whispered, "was when I almost quit." Jin's head snapped toward him. "What?" Jimin stared at the blank screen. "I was going to leave. Not just the studio. Everything. I had already written a message to Nam Junhyung. I was going to say I couldn't do it anymore." RM's face changed completely, guilt and shock hitting him at the same time. "You never sent it. Because Jungkook found me first." Taehyung's eyes moved to the phone like the old footage had become something sacred and ugly at once. Jimin's voice shook. "He promised he wouldn't tell anyone because I begged him not to. I thought if the others knew how close I was to leaving, they would never look at me the same way again." Jin's voice broke. "You were a kid. I was old enough to be ashamed." Suga spoke quietly from the door. "No. You were tired." Jimin looked at him, and Suga's face was colder than usual, but his eyes were not. "There's a difference." RM took one step back, as if he needed space to breathe. "This is what they threatened to release," Jimin nodded. "At first, just screenshots, then short clips. They said they could make it look like Jungkook had been hiding things from me for years, like he manipulated me, like I depended on him too much, like he had control over me." J-Hope's voice came out thin. "That's disgusting. That's why I pushed him away," Jimin said. "If they wanted to ruin him through me, I thought maybe I could cut the connection before they had a reason." Taehyung's face crumpled. "But you became the reason they used anyway." Jimin nodded, and the truth was so painful, no one corrected him. Suga turned from the door. "We need to find the original source." RM looked at him. "Old rented studio, hidden camera, years-old archive. This isn't just someone on night staff." Suga nodded. "No night staff might be the hand. Not the head." Jin stood. "Then who?" Before anyone answered, Taehyung's phone vibrated. He looked down, and his whole body froze. "It's Jungkook." RM moved fast. "Speaker." Taehyung answered, voice shaking. "Jungkooka?" There was wind on the line. Rain. A car engine somewhere nearby. Jungkook's voice was low and urgent. "Don't move Jimin through the basement route." RM went still. "How did you know we were considering moving him?" Jungkook did not answer the question. "Because they're waiting there." Jin's face hardened. "Who is waiting?" "Two men near the service elevator. Not fans, not reporters. They have staff access cards." J-Hope whispered, "How are you seeing that?" Jungkook's breathing shifted. "I'm across the street." Jimin sat up despite the pain. "You're at the hospital?" Jungkook went silent for half a second. Then, softer. "I said I wouldn't come in. I didn't say I'd leave you unprotected." Jimin's eyes filled again, but this time the tears had anger inside them too. "You idiot!" A broken little laugh came through the line. "Yeah." RM stepped closer to the phone. "Jungkook, listen carefully. Do not approach them. We are changing the route." Jungkook's voice hardened. "Too late." Suga's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" A loud noise cracked through the phone. Not a gunshot. Not anything that dramatic. A door slammed. Footsteps scraped. Jungkook cursed under his breath. Taehyung gripped the phone with both hands. "Jungkook?" Rain swallowed the line for a second. Then Jungkook said, breathless, "One of them just saw me." Jimin's face went white. RM's voice turned sharp. "Jungkook, get out of there." But Jungkook was already moving. His breathing became fast, controlled, dangerous. The call filled with running steps, tires on wet pavement, someone shouting in the background. Jimin pulled the blanket off again. Jin grabbed him. "No." Jimin fought him weakly. "He's outside. And you're not going anywhere like this." RM pointed to Suga. "Call the driver. Now. J-Hope, get security to the east exit, but don't say why. Taehyung, keep him on the line." Taehyung's voice broke. "Jungkook, talk to me." Jungkook's answer came through with a strange calm that scared all of them. "If anything happens, don't trust the man with the blue badge." Then the line went dead. The room exploded into movement, but Jimin stayed frozen on the bed, staring at Taehyung's phone. A rule had been made minutes ago. No one goes alone. Jungkook had already broken it. The hospital became a maze. RM moved first, not fast enough to look panicked, but with the kind of controlled urgency that made people obey before they understood why. Jin kept one hand near Jimin's shoulder, not forcing him down anymore, but silently warning him that if he tried to run, Jin would physically stop him. J-Hope disappeared into the hallway to talk to security, his voice low and bright in that dangerous way it got when he was pretending everything was normal. Suga stood near the door, listening. He did not look like he was waiting. He looked like he was hunting too, only with less noise. Taehyung stayed by Jimin's bed, calling Jungkook again and again. Every call failed. Each failed call changed Jimin's face a little more. Fear became guilt. Guilt became anger. Anger became something sharper. "Give me my shoes," Jimin said. Jin looked at him like he had lost his mind. "You are attached to an IV." Jimin pulled at the tape on his hand. Jin grabbed his wrist immediately. "Don't." Jimin's eyes flashed. "Then bring him here." "We are trying." "Trying is not enough." Jin bent closer, and for the first time that day his voice rose in a way that was not about control, but terror. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't want to drag Jungkook in here by the collar and yell at him for being reckless? You think I'm calm right now?" Jimin's lips parted, but Jin kept going. "I am holding myself together because if I break, everyone else breaks. So please, for once, don't make me choose between protecting you and protecting him." That silenced Jimin. Jin looked away, breathing hard, ashamed of how much truth had come out. The room was too quiet for a second. Then Jimin whispered, "I never wanted you to choose." Jin's face softened instantly, but before he could answer, Suga spoke. "Movement near the east exit." RM turned from the hallway. "Jungkook?" Suga shook his head. "Security says 2 staff badges just went inactive." RM's jaw tightened. "Inactive how?" "Disabled remotely." J-Hope rushed back in. "Hospital security didn't do it." Taehyung stopped calling and looked up. "Then company security?" RM did not answer. That answer was becoming uglier every minute. Jimin looked at him. "Blue badge." RM turned. "What?" Jungkook said not to trust the man with the blue badge. Suga's eyes narrowed. "Company visitors have silver temporary badges. Hospital staff have white. Blue is internal security." Jin cursed under his breath. "Our security?" RM looked like the words physically hurt him. "Maybe." J-Hope shook his head, almost refusing the possibility. "No. Some of those people have been with us for years." Suga's voice was flat. "That makes it easier, not harder." Taehyung looked sick. Jimin closed his eyes, and memories moved behind them in broken flashes. A hallway. A badge clipped to a jacket. A voice telling him there had been a privacy breach but not to worry the members. A promise that everything would be handled quietly. A suggestion that if he kept his distance from Jungkook, the situation would cool down. Jimin opened his eyes fast. "I know who warned me." Everyone turned to him. RM stepped closer. "Who?" Jimin swallowed. "Director Han." The name changed the room. Not because Director Han was powerful in a public way. Fans did not know him. Media did not quote him. But inside the company, he was one of the people who could open doors without asking. He handled private crisis management, sensitive schedules, internal access. He was trusted because he had always seemed invisible. That kind of man was dangerous if he decided to stop protecting and start controlling. Jin's face darkened. Han told you not to tell us? Jimin nodded slowly. He said the leak came from outside. He said the company would handle it. He said if I made noise, the footage would spread faster. RM's eyes turned cold. He never filed an internal report. Suga looked at him. You checked? I asked legal this morning. They knew about the clip from the rehearsal leak, not old footage. J-Hope's voice dropped. So Han isolated Jimin, Taehyung whispered, and used Jungkook as the pressure point. Jimin's throat tightened. Hearing it said so plainly made him feel foolish. I believed him. Jin turned to him immediately. No, you were scared. I still believed him. Suga came closer, his voice quiet but hard. People like that don't need you stupid. They need you tired. There's a difference. Jimin looked down, and the words hit because they were true. He had not been careless. He had been cornered. RM took out his phone. We need to contact Jungkook with something he'll recognize, but no one else will understand. Taehyung said, He's not answering. Then we don't call. RM looked at Jimin. We send a message from your phone. Jimin nodded. What? RM hesitated. Something only he would know from that night. Jimin's face changed. The old practice room. Younger Jungkook sitting on the floor beside him until sunrise. A vending machine outside that kept eating coins. Jungkook giving him a banana milk and pretending he was not crying. Jimin, embarrassed and broken, whispering that he wanted the lights off. Jungkook saying, Then I'll stay in the dark with you. Jimin looked at his phone, then typed one sentence. The lights can stay off. Come back anyway. He sent it to Jungkook. Taehyung looked away quickly, as if the sentence was too private to witness. Jin's eyes softened. J-Hope pressed his lips together. Suga said nothing, but his gaze lowered in respect. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the message showed delivered. Jimin's breath stopped. Seconds passed. The typing bubble appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, Jungkook's reply came. Don't trust Han. I have proof. RM's face hardened. Ask where he is. Jimin typed with shaking fingers. Where are you? Jungkook replied almost immediately this time. Old parking level. B2. Hurt, but moving. Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs. Hurt. Where? No answer. Jin turned to RM. We go. RM nodded. Suga, with me. J-Hope, stay with Jimin and TAE. Jimin said, No. Everyone looked at him. I'm coming. Jin exploded. You are not. Jimin's voice did not rise. That made it worse. If Han is using me, then Jungkook might not trust anyone else who shows up. If he's hurt and cornered, he needs to see me. RM shook his head. Or seeing you like this will make him panic and make a bad decision. Jimin's eyes burned. He already made a bad decision because I wasn't there. The words hit hard. J-Hope stepped closer. Jimin, please think. I am thinking. He looked at each of them. All morning, everyone has decided where I should be, what I should know, what I can handle. I know you did it because you love me. But that is exactly how Han controlled me too. That stopped them. Even Jin could not answer right away. Jimin continued, voice shaking but clear. I'm not asking to run into danger alone. I'm asking to stand with you. If the rule is no one goes alone, then don't leave me behind alone. RM closed his eyes briefly. Leader and brother fought across his face. When he opened them, the decision was made, and it cost him something. Wheelchair, mask, hood. We move as patients and family, not artists. Jin looked furious. Namjoon. RM met his eyes. He's right. Jin looked at Jimin, then at the floor, then back up. If you faint, I'm carrying you back, and I don't care who sees. Jimin nodded once. Fair. J-Hope moved fast, getting a hoodie from the emergency bag. Taehyung helped Jimin sit forward slowly. Pain washed across Jimin's face, but he bit it down. Jin noticed and looked like he wanted to yell again, but instead he gently adjusted the blanket around Jimin's legs when the wheelchair arrived. That small act nearly undid Jimin more than the shouting had. They moved out 6 minutes later. RM walked in front with Suga, both wearing masks and caps low. Jin pushed Jimin's wheelchair. J-Hope walked beside them carrying a folder like a family member handling discharge papers. Taehyung trailed behind, watching every reflection in the glass. They passed nurses who did not look twice, then guards who looked too long. On the elevator down, nobody spoke. The numbers dropped slowly. 6, 5, 4, 3. Jimin gripped the armrests. Jin leaned down slightly and whispered, "Still with us?" Jimin nodded. "Yeah. Liar. Yeah." Jin's mouth twitched despite everything. Then the elevator reached B2. The doors opened to a concrete parking level, washed in fluorescent light and rainwater, dragged in by tires. It smelled like oil, wet cement, and something metallic. At first, they saw no one. Then Taehyung whispered, "There." Behind a black van near the far wall, someone moved. Jungkook stepped into view, one hand pressed against his side. Hair wet, face pale, eyes locked immediately on Jimin. For 1 second, all the danger disappeared. Jimin forgot the hospital. Jungkook forgot the men chasing him. They looked at each other like the whole day had been a nightmare neither of them could wake from. Then Jungkook's expression changed from relief to horror. "Why did you bring him here?" Jin snapped. "Nice to see you too." Jungkook limped forward, anger and fear breaking through his calm. "He shouldn't be here." Jimin pushed himself upright in the chair. "Neither should you." Jungkook stopped. That one sentence did what all the calls could not. It reached him. His face twisted, and for a second he looked young again. Young like the boy in the video. Young like someone who had been carrying too much for too long. RM moved forward. "Where's the proof?" Jungkook looked around the parking level. "Not here." Suga's voice was sharp. "Then why did you tell us B2? Jungkook's eyes flicked to the security camera above them. "Because I needed him to watch us gather." Taehyung froze. "Who?" Jungkook looked at Jimin, and his voice dropped. "Han thinks he's hunting me." He pulled a small drive from his jacket and placed it in Jimin's hand. "But he forgot I learned from the best." Before anyone could answer, the lights in the parking level went out. Darkness hit the parking level like a physical thing. The fluorescent lights snapped off together, leaving only the weak red glow of emergency signs and the gray wash of rain from the entrance ramp. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Jikook moved first. Injured or not, he crossed the space between himself and Jimin so fast, Jin barely had time to react. He put his body in front of the wheelchair, one hand gripping the handle, the other still pressed to his side. Jin snapped, "You're bleeding!" Jungkook did not look down. Later, Suga's voice cut through the dark. "Everyone low. Cameras may still have infrared." RM reached for his phone flashlight, then stopped before turning it on. "If we light ourselves up, we make it easier." Taehyung whispered, "Someone cut power on purpose." J-Hope's voice came from behind Jimin, steady, but strained. "Then someone knows we're here." Jimin could see Jungkook only in pieces. The line of his shoulder. The wet hair stuck near his eyes. The way his breathing was controlled but uneven. Jimin wanted to ask where he was hurt, who touched him, why he had gone alone, why he had stayed outside the hospital after saying he would not come in. Instead, the first thing that came out was, "You're an idiot." Jungkook laughed once under his breath, but it broke halfway. "You said that already. I mean it more now." "I know." The emergency lights flickered. A distant door opened somewhere in the parking level. Everyone went silent. Footsteps, more than one person. Slow, careful. RM gestured toward the service corridor. Suga nodded. Jin tightened his hands on the wheelchair. Jungkook leaned close to Jimin, voice barely audible. "Can you hold the drive?" Jimin looked down at the small object in his palm. "What's on it?" "Access logs, original leak path, and a recording." "Of Han?" Jungkook hesitated. That hesitation scared Jimin. Of Han talking to someone above him. RM heard it and turned sharply. Above him? Jungkook nodded once. I don't know who yet. Suga muttered. Of course. The footsteps grew closer. J-Hope pointed toward the far side where two cars created a narrow path. There. They moved without arguing. Jin pushed Jimin carefully but quickly, wheels whispering over wet concrete. Jungkook stayed close enough that his knee brushed the side of the chair whenever they turned. That closeness would have comforted Jimin in any other moment. Now it made him feel every second they had lost. They reached the service corridor door. RM tried it. Locked. Suga stepped forward with a stolen security card. Jungkook handed him without explanation. Jin stared. Do I want to know? Jungkook said. No, Suga swiped. The reader flashed red. He swiped again. Red. Footsteps echoed behind them. Taehyung looked back. Young. RM took the card and tried a different angle. Red. J-Hope whispered. Fast would be good. Jimin looked at the badge reader, then at Jungkook. Blue badge. Jungkook's eyes met his. Yeah. Jimin's memory flashed again. Director Han's badge hanging near his chest. Blue stripe. Silver clip. A thumbprint scanner on office doors. Not just badge access. Biometric access. He controls the locks, Jimin said. RM's face tightened. Then he's watching. Suddenly a voice echoed from the dark parking level. Calm, polite, familiar. There's no need to run. Everyone froze. Director Han stepped into the weak emergency glow about 20 meters away. He wore a dark coat, rain on the shoulders, his blue badge visible against his chest, like Jungkook had warned. Two security men stood behind him. Not hospital. Not regular company guards. Private. Quiet. The kind of people hired when someone wanted a problem handled without paperwork. Jin moved in front of the wheelchair beside Jungkook. RM stepped forward, shoulders squared. Suga angled himself near the wall, recording with his phone hidden low. J-Hope's face went blank in the way it did when his fear turned into focus. Taehyung's hand found the back of Jimin's chair. Han looked at them with practiced disappointment. This is exactly what I tried to prevent. Jimin's voice was cold. You tried to prevent us from talking. Han sighed. I tried to prevent a scandal from destroying all of you. Jungkook's laugh was quiet and dangerous. By leaking it yourself? Han's eyes moved to him. Careful, Jungkook SSI. Jungkook stepped forward, but Jimin grabbed his sleeve. Not hard. Just enough. Jungkook stopped instantly. Han noticed. His mouth curved slightly. Still the same weakness. Jimin's grip tightened. Jungkook's body went rigid. Jin's face darkened. RM said, You don't speak to them like that. Han tilted his head. I speak to them like someone who has spent years cleaning up after emotional decisions that could ruin careers. J-Hope's voice came soft but sharp. Is that what you call blackmail now? Han looked almost offended. Blackmail is such an ugly word. Suga finally spoke. Accurate words often are. Han's gaze flicked toward him. Min Yongi. Always recording when you shouldn't. Suga did not blink. Always talking when you shouldn't. The two security men shifted. RM lifted a hand slightly, signaling everyone not to move. Han looked at Jimin. You were supposed to rest. Instead, you let them drag you into this. Jimin felt the old fear try to rise again. Han's voice had worked on him for weeks because it sounded reasonable. It sounded like care. It sounded like someone older, calmer, smarter, telling him that silence was maturity and obedience was protection. But now, Jungkook was bleeding beside him. The members were standing in the dark because of secrets Han had fed like poison. Jimin looked up. No, I let them stand beside me. Han's expression hardened for the first time. You don't understand the scale of what you're risking. Then explain it, RM said. Right here. Han's eyes moved to the security camera above them. Not everything needs to be performed for an audience. Jungkook pulled the drive from Jimin's hand suddenly and held it up. Then maybe this audience is enough. Han's face changed, just slightly, but everyone saw it. Jimin's heart kicked. The drive mattered. Han recovered quickly. You have no idea what is on that. Jungkook's voice lowered. I know you accessed the old practice room archive 3 weeks ago. I know you copied edited files to an external server. I know you contacted a media broker before the hospital clip leaked. Han said nothing. RM looked at Jungkook. You confirmed all that? Jungkook nodded, eyes still on Han. And I know you weren't alone. Han smiled faintly. You're clever. That's always been part of the problem. Jungkook's jaw clenched. Jimin's hand moved from his sleeve to his wrist, grounding him. Han looked at the gesture, and something like annoyance flashed in his eyes. This is why I warned you, Jimin, SSI. You let personal attachment cloud your judgment. Jimin's voice shook, but he did not look away. You used my worst night to control me. Han answered calmly. I used available information to manage risk. Jin took one step forward. RM caught his arm before he could do more. Jin's voice was low and furious. Say one more sentence like that. Han ignored him. The public doesn't care about context. The company doesn't survive on feelings. You know this. All of you know this. J-Hope said, We know the industry is cruel. That doesn't mean you get to become crueler. Han's face tightened. You think this is cruelty? Cruelty is letting one member's private dependency become the story that destroys 7 careers. Jungkook moved again, faster this time, and Jimin could not fully stop him. RM stepped between Jungkook and Han. Don't! Jungkook's eyes were burning. Say that about him again. Han looked at Jungkook with cold satisfaction. You still react before thinking. Jimin realized it then. Han wanted Jungkook to attack. Maybe not physically, but enough. One shove, one shouted threat. One messy clip in a dark parking level showing Jungkook aggressive while Jimin sat injured nearby. That would complete the story the leak had started. Jimin's voice cut through the tension. Jungkook! Jungkook froze, chest rising and falling. Jimin looked at him. Come here. For 1 second, Jungkook looked like he might refuse, trapped between rage and obedience to Jimin's voice. Then he stepped back to Jimin's side. Han's jaw tightened. He had lost that move. RM saw it too. His voice became calm and official. Director Han, you're done speaking to them. From now on, you speak to legal. Han laughed softly. Which legal? The one that reports to the same board that asked me to contain this? The words landed like thunder. Board! Contain! Suddenly, above him had a shape, even if it did not yet have a name. Suga's recording phone remained hidden, but his eyes sharpened. RM's face went still in the way that meant he was memorizing every word. Jin whispered, Bored? Han seemed to realize he had said too much, but instead of retreating, he leaned into it. You think your freedom is free? You think 7 men at your level get to make emotional choices without consequences? The company built walls around you for years. Taehyung's voice came from behind Jimin, quiet and shaking with anger. Walls are supposed to protect people, not trap them. Han looked at him. Idealistic as always. Taehyung stepped forward. Better than being rotten. The security men moved. Jungkook turned instantly, putting himself between them and Taehyung despite the pain in his side. Jin grabbed the wheelchair handles. J-Hope shifted closer to Jimin. RM raised his phone. Screen lit now. Call connected. Everything you said for the last 2 minutes has been sent live to our lawyer. Han's face finally lost its calm. That was unwise. RM's voice dropped. No. Unwise was thinking we would stay scared forever. Then the service corridor door behind them clicked. Everyone turned. It opened from the other side. A woman from hospital administration stood there, pale but determined, with 2 uniformed police officers behind her. For the first time, Han looked truly surprised. Suga slipped his phone into his pocket. I called them before the lights went out. Jin stared at him. You could have mentioned that. Suga shrugged. Ruins the timing. The officers stepped into the parking level. Han straightened, already preparing a professional explanation. But Jungkook suddenly swayed. Jimin saw it before anyone else. Jungkook. Jungkook blinked once, like he was trying to keep the world in place. Then his knees buckled. Jimin reached for him from the wheelchair. Uselessly. Desperately. Jin lunged. RM turned. Taehyung shouted his name. Jungkook collapsed against the side of Jimin's chair, one hand still clenched around the drive, and the last thing he whispered before his eyes closed was, "Don't let them take it." The next hour broke into pieces. Jimin remembered shouting Jungkook's name until his throat burned. He remembered Jin on the floor with Jungkook, pressing his hand against the wound under Jungkook's jacket and yelling for medical help. He remembered RM standing between Han and the officers, voice steady but deadly, refusing to let Han move closer. He remembered Taehyung crying openly now, no longer trying to hide anything. He remembered Jikook taking the drive from Jungkook's fist and placing it inside Jimin's hoodie pocket because Jungkook had trusted Jimin with it first. He remembered Suga telling the police, that man threatened an injured patient and interfered with an ongoing privacy crime, like he had been waiting his whole life to say something that cleanly furious. Jungkook was taken upstairs on a stretcher, and Jimin was forced back into his own hospital room, not because he agreed, but because his body gave out the moment adrenaline left. By evening, 2 hospital rooms on the private floor became the center of everything. Jimin in one, Jungkook 2 doors down, security outside both, police inside the hallway, lawyers on video calls, company executives suddenly unreachable, the internet still burning with rumors, unaware that the story had already become bigger and uglier behind closed doors. Jimin sat in bed with the hoodie still around his shoulders, refusing to remove it because the drive was hidden in the inner pocket. Jin had told him 3 times that the drive should go to RM. Jimin had said no each time, not because he did not trust RM, because Jungkook's last conscious words had been a rule of their own. Don't let them take it. RM did not argue. He understood. Instead, he sat across from Jimin with his laptop open, headphones around his neck, face lit by documents and messages. Suga leaned beside him, going through a copied version of the files after Jikook found a clean device from hospital administration. Taehyung had not left Jungkook's room since the doctors allowed 1 visitor at a time. Jikook moved between rooms like a lifeline, carrying updates, water, blankets, pieces of calm. Jin stayed with Jimin, because Jin knew Jimin was 1 bad sentence away from ripping out the IV again and crawling to Jungkook if he had to. He's awake yet? Jimin asked for the 7th time. Jin sighed. No, but stable? Yes. You're not lying. Jin looked at him. I'm offended you think I would lie badly enough for you to notice. Jimin almost smiled. Almost. Then it faded. He was bleeding and still stayed in front of me. Jin's expression softened. That's Jungkook. That's not healthy. Also Jungkook. The small exchange should have eased something, but it only made Jimin's chest hurt more. The truth was, Jungkook had protected him in a way that terrified him. Not because it was new, but because it was familiar. Jungkook had always stepped closer when Jimin stepped back, always watched the room when Jimin smiled too brightly, always noticed when Jimin said he was fine with the wrong tone. And Jimin had loved that once. Then he had feared it. Then someone had weaponized it. RM took off his headphones slowly. We found the original folder. Everyone looked at him. Suga's face was grim. Jikook, who had just entered, shut the door behind him. Jin moved closer to Jimin's bed. Jimin's hand instinctively went to the hoodie pocket. What is it? RM turned the laptop slightly, not showing the files themselves, only the folder names. There are surveillance clips from multiple years, practice rooms, hallways, waiting rooms. Some dorm-adjacent security feeds from old buildings. Most of it is boring. Some of it is private. All of it should have been deleted or secured. Jin's face twisted with disgust. Who had access? Suga answered. Too many people at first. But the recent export was narrow. Han accessed them 3 weeks ago through a board-authorized temporary credential. Jikook sat down slowly. Board-authorized, RM nodded. The credential belonged to an external risk consultant. Jimin frowned. Who? RM looked at Suga. Suga clicked into another document. His voice was low. A private image management firm. They were hired quietly after an internal review flagged member dependency narratives as a future brand risk. The phrase sounded so cold, Jimin almost did not understand it. Then he did, and the room turned red around the edges. Member dependency narratives, he repeated. That's what they called me and Jungkook? Jin looked ready to break something. They made your friendship sound like a disease. J-Hope's voice trembled with rage. Not friendship, any closeness they couldn't control. RM nodded slowly. The files include notes, not just on Jimin and Jungkook, on all of us. Suga's face darkened. Emotional pressure points. The room went dead quiet. Jimin looked from RM to Suga. What does that mean? Suga did not answer immediately. RM did. It means someone created profiles on how to influence each of us during a crisis. J-Hope's eyes went cold in a way Jimin rarely saw. Influence, Jin said. Manipulate. RM did not correct him. Jimin felt sick. For years, they had known fame came with observation. Cameras, staff, schedules, security, fans, media. But this was different. This was not being watched by the world. This was being studied by people close enough to know which wound to press. Why? Jimin asked. His voice sounded far away. RM scrolled through a document, jaw tight. Because a major contract renewal was coming. The board wanted to prevent anything unpredictable. Any personal conflict. Any member refusing schedules. Any decision they couldn't manage. J-Hope leaned back, staring at the ceiling. So they created a blackmail system and called it management, Suga said. Han may have gone further than planned, but the system gave him the weapon. Jin looked at RM. We need to release this, RM shook his head. Not raw, too many private clips, too many ways it could hurt everyone again. Jimin nodded, even though anger screamed in him. He's right. Jin stared. Jimin. Jimin's hand tightened over the hidden drive. If we throw everything out there, Han still wins. The whole point was to make our private lives public enough that we panic. RM watched him carefully. Then what do you want to do? Jimin looked toward the wall separating him from the hallway, from Jungkook's room, from the person who had collapsed, still trying to protect the proof. I want control back. Suga's gaze sharpened. How? Jimin swallowed. We choose one truth, not all of it, not the footage, not the old pain. We say there was an internal privacy breach, that edited material was used to threaten members, and that we are cooperating with investigators. Jin nodded slowly. And Jungkook? Jimin's voice broke slightly on the name, but he kept going. We say he did not abandon me. We say the clip was edited. We say he returned and helped me before the ambulance arrived. J-Hope's eyes filled with relief. That protects him. It protects the truth, Jimin said. RM leaned back, studying him with something like pride and sadness. And your secret? Jimin smiled faintly, but it hurt. My secret is that I almost quit years ago, and Jungkook stayed with me in the dark. If anyone tries to twist that into something ugly, let them answer for why they were watching a kid break down in a private room. The silence that followed was heavy, but different. This time, it carried respect. Jin reached for Jimin's hand and held it, not asking permission, and Jimin let him. I'm sorry, Jin whispered. Jimin looked at him. For what? For not knowing. Jimin squeezed his hand weakly. I worked really hard to make sure you didn't. That hurt Jin more, not less. Before he could answer, the door opened. Taehyung stepped in. His eyes were red, but his face had changed. He's awake. Jimin's whole body reacted before his mind did. He sat forward too fast and winced. Jin caught him. Careful. Jimin ignored him. Did he ask for anyone? Taehyung looked at him for a long second. A small, sad smile touched his face. Who do you think? Jimin closed his eyes, and the breath that left him sounded like something breaking free. RM stood. We'll give you a minute. Jimin opened his eyes. No. Everyone stopped. Jimin looked at them, then toward the door. No more hiding. No more rooms where only two people carry the whole truth. Jin nodded. J-Hope wiped his face. Suga closed the laptop. RM picked up the copied files. Together, they moved down the hallway to Jungkook's room. Every step made Jimin's body protest, but he stayed in the wheelchair, with Jin pushing him, Taehyung walking close, J-Hope steady beside them, RM and Suga behind like a wall. When they entered, Jungkook was lying against raised pillows, pale, bandaged under his shirt, hair dry now but messy. He looked smaller than he had in the parking level, and that terrified Jimin more. Jungkook's eyes found him immediately. You shouldn't be out of bed. Jimin let out a shaky breath. That's your opening line? Jungkook's mouth twitched, but his eyes were wet. I had better ones. Painkillers stole them. Jin muttered. Finally, medicine does something useful. J-Hope almost laughed, then covered it badly. For one fragile second, the room felt like them again. Then Jungkook's gaze dropped to Jimin's hoodie pocket. The drive? Jimin nodded. Safe. Jungkook relaxed just a little. Good. Jimin's voice turned quiet. You scared me. Jungkook looked away. You scared me first. The words were simple, but they carried 3 weeks. One old video, one hospital collapse, and years of things they had never named correctly. RM stepped closer. We found what's on the drive. Jungkook's face hardened. Han? Suga nodded. And others. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. I knew it. Jimin looked at him. Why didn't you tell us before going after him? Jungkook opened his eyes. Because I thought, if I brought proof first, you wouldn't have to explain the old footage. Jimin's throat tightened. You were protecting my secret, Jungkook answered quietly. I was protecting your choice. That sentence broke something open in Jimin, not because it was dramatic, because it was the exact thing Han had stolen from him. Choice. The choice to speak. The choice to stay silent. The choice to ask for help before fear made the decision for him. Jimin looked down, then back up. I'm sorry I pushed you away. Jungkook's jaw tightened, emotion rising too fast. I knew you were trying to protect me. That doesn't make it okay. No, Jungkook's voice cracked. It just made it hurt more. The room went silent around them. The other members did not look away this time. They stayed, because this was not a private burden anymore. It was a group wound. Jimin reached out. Jungkook looked at his hand like he was afraid touching it would make everything real. Then he took it. Carefully, like both of them were injured in places no bandage could cover. RM's phone vibrated. He checked it, and his expression changed again. Suga noticed immediately. What? RM looked from the screen to the members. The company just sent a draft statement. Jin's face hardened. And? RM's voice was cold. They blamed the incident on emotional stress between Jimin and Jungkook. They deny any internal privacy breach. And they say Jungkook is taking time away for reflection. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Jungkook's hand tightened around Jimin's. Jimin's face went calm in a way that made the room feel colder. No. RM looked at him. No. Jimin lifted his eyes, and there was no fear left in them now. Not because he was not afraid, but because he had finally chosen what to do with it. They don't get to write the story anymore. Jungkook stared at him. Jin straightened. J-Hope's mouth firmed. Taehyung stepped closer. Suga's eyes sharpened. RM lowered the phone slowly. Jimin looked at all 6 of them and said the sentence that changed the night. We release our own statement first.
The hospital room changed after Jimin said it. Not loudly, not with chaos. It changed the way a room changes when people stop surviving and start deciding. RM stood with the company's draft statement glowing on his phone, the words on that screen so clean they almost looked harmless. Emotional stress, private misunderstanding, time for reflection, respect their privacy. It was the kind of statement written to sound gentle while quietly placing the knife exactly where it would hurt most. On Jimin. On Jungkook, on the bond between them. On the story fans would repeat before they ever learned the truth. Jimin kept holding Jungkook's hand. His fingers were cold, but his grip did not shake anymore. Jungkook looked at him from the hospital bed, pale and exhausted, one arm taped with an IV bandage hidden under his shirt, eyes full of pain he was still trying to hide from everyone. "Jimin," he said quietly, "if we release something first, they'll come harder." Jimin nodded. "I know." Jungkook's jaw tightened. "They'll use the old footage. Maybe. They'll twist it. They already did." Jungkook went silent. That was the truth neither of them could escape. The footage did not need to be public to hurt them. It had already changed their choices. It had already made Jimin feel trapped. It had already made Jungkook bleed in a parking level because he thought proof was the only way to bring Jimin back safely. RM put his phone down on the small table beside Jungkook's bed. "We need to be careful. If we accuse the company directly without verified evidence, they can bury this in legal and call us unstable." Suga looked at the laptop in his hands. "Then we don't accuse, we document." Jin crossed his arms. "That sounds like accusing with better shoes." Suga glanced at him. "Exactly." J-Hope walked to the door and checked the hallway. 2 police officers stood near the nurses' station now. Security had changed shifts, and every blue badge had been removed from the floor by order of hospital administration. Still, J-Hope did not relax. None of them did. Once you learn that someone close enough to protect you has been watching you, every shadow starts looking hired. Taehyung stood near the window, phone in both hands, reading fan comments he should not have been reading. His face kept changing. Anger, hurt, fear, then something worse. "They're already turning it into sides," he said. Jin snapped, "Stop looking." Taehyung did not look up. "Some are saying Jimin manipulated Jungkook. Some are saying Jungkook caused Jimin's collapse. Some are saying Namjoon is hiding the truth. Some are saying we're all pretending to be close." He finally lifted his eyes. "They're fighting over us like we're dead, and they're dividing our things." The sentence hit the room hard. J-Hope closed his eyes. Jin turned away, jaw clenched. RM looked down. Jungkook's grip tightened around Jimin's hand. Jimin felt it and turned his head toward him. Jungkook's face was calm, but his eyes were not. He had always looked strongest when he was closest to breaking. Jimin hated that he knew the signs so well. "Give me the phone," Jimin said. Taehyung hesitated. "Haehyung, give it." Taehyung handed it over reluctantly. Jimin looked at the screen. He did not scroll for long. He did not need to. The words blurred into one cruel shape. Lies pretending to be concern. Concern turning into accusation. Love becoming a weapon. He handed the phone back without expression. "Then we speak before they decide who we are." RM sat slowly in the chair across from the bed. "What do you want the statement to say?" Jimin looked at Jungkook. "The truth we can say without giving them the truth they stole." Jungkook stared back, understanding before anyone else did. "The clip was edited." "Yes." "There was an internal privacy breach." "Yes." "Someone used private material to pressure you." Jimin breathed in. "Pressure us?" Jungkook's eyes softened, but Jimin kept going before emotion could pull him under. "I won't let them make it sound like this happened because you and I had a personal argument. We argued because someone forced us into a corner. That matters." Jin nodded immediately. "It matters a lot." J-Hope came back from the door. "We also need to say we're cooperating with investigators so fans stop trying to investigate random staff themselves." RM agreed. "Good. No names yet." Not Han, not the board, not any internal role. Suga's fingers moved across the laptop. "And no mention of the old footage. We say private archived material." Taehyung looked at Jimin. "Are you okay with that?" Jimin almost laughed. Okay. The word felt too small for what this was, but he nodded. "Better that than letting them turn silence into guilt." RM started drafting out loud, voice careful and official at first. "This is BTS. Recent clips circulating online do not show the full situation. The footage has been edited and shared without context." Jin interrupted. "Too soft." RM looked up. "We need calm language." Jin pointed at Jungkook's bandaged side. "Calm language is how they got this far." Suga said. "He's right, but don't look happy about it." Jin glared at him. J-Hope stepped in. "Firm, not reckless." RM nodded and began again. "The footage circulating online is edited and does not represent what happened. Jimin received medical care after collapsing from acute distress, and Jungkook was present and helped before emergency services arrived." Jungkook looked away at that, guilt crossing his face. Jimin saw it. "Don't." Jungkook looked back. "What?" "Don't hear blame and facts." Jungkook swallowed. For a second he looked like he wanted to say something, but he only nodded. RM continued. "We have discovered evidence of an internal privacy breach involving private archived materials and unauthorized access to members, personal schedules, and spaces. We have submitted evidence to legal representatives and investigators." Taehyung whispered, "That's good." Suga added, "Say edited materials were used to pressure members. Don't say blackmail unless legal approves." Jin muttered, "Cowards love polite words." RM typed anyway. J-Hope said, "End with unity." Everyone looked at him. He seemed embarrassed, but he did not back down. Not in a cheesy way, but people need to know we're together, not because fans demand it, because the person doing this wants us divided. Jimin nodded. "Say we will speak together when it is safe to do so." Jungkook's eyes moved to Jimin. "Together?" Jimin met his gaze. "Yes." That one word carried more than any apology. Jungkook lowered his eyes, and Jimin saw his throat move as he swallowed emotion down. RM finished the draft and read it once. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. It sounded clean, controlled, stronger than the company's version, but still safe enough to survive. Then Suga leaned closer to the laptop, frowning. "Wait!" RM looked at him. "What?" Suga scrolled through the files from the drive. "There's another folder." Jungkook turned his head sharply. "Another, hidden inside the access log export." Suga clicked carefully. "Encrypted, but not well." Jin stepped closer. "Can you open it?" Suga gave him a look. "I'm offended." He worked for less than a minute, but the room felt like it held a whole night inside it. Then the folder opened. There were only 3 files, 1 audio recording, 1 spreadsheet, 1 image. Suga's expression changed first, not shock, recognition. "Namjoon!" RM leaned in. His face went still. J-Hope's voice dropped. "What is it?" RM did not answer. He clicked the image. It loaded slowly, a scanned page from a contract addendum with several signatures blacked out. At the top, the title read, "Contingency Protocol for Member Noncompliance." Jimin felt Jungkook's hand tighten around his again. Jin whispered, "What the hell is that?" RM opened the spreadsheet next. Names, dates, trigger events, recommended pressure strategies, media exposure risk, emotional leverage category. It was not just a file. It was a map of how to break them without leaving fingerprints. Taehyung took 1 step back, face pale. "That's us." J-Hope said nothing. His eyes were fixed on a line next to his own name. Jin leaned over, saw his, and went completely silent. Jimin did not want to look, but his eyes found the entries anyway. Jimin, abandonment sensitivity. Perfection failure fear. Jungkook attachment vector. Jungkook, protector response. Guilt trigger. Jimin vulnerability vector. The room became airless. Jungkook's hand went limp for a second, then tightened again, but differently now. Not protective, horrified. "They studied us," he whispered. Suga's voice was flat and cold. "They weaponized us." RM clicked the audio file. Jimin wanted to tell him not to, nobody did. A man's voice filled the room. Han, calm, distant. "If Park refuses compliance, isolate the Jian connection first. It is the fastest destabilizer. Jian will overreact if he believes Park is in danger. That creates usable footage." A second voice answered, distorted, deeper, unfamiliar. "And if the group closes ranks," Han replied, "then we escalate through the leader. Kim Namjoon will try to protect the institution before he protects himself. Make him choose between the group and disclosure." The audio ended. No one moved. RM stared at the screen. Jimin stared at RM. The sentence had found another wound, make him choose. That was what had been happening all day, not just to Jimin. Not just to Jungkook, to RM too. The trap had been built for all of them, and every instinct they had used to survive together had been turned into a lever. Jin's voice came out low. "We release everything." RM shook his head slowly, but this time not because he wanted caution, because he was shaken. "If we release this raw, we expose private psychological notes on all of us." Suga shut the laptop slightly. "Then we don't release the spreadsheet. We release the existence of it through lawyers." Jungkook looked at RM. "And the statement?" RM looked at the company draft on his phone, then at the group's draft on the laptop, then at the hidden files. Something in his face changed. For years, RM had carried the kind of responsibility people praised from far away and misunderstood up close. Be calm, be smart, be the bridge, be the leader. Protect the members. Protect the team. Protect the company when needed. Protect the fans from worry. Protect everyone from the full ugliness of what survival sometimes costs. But now he was looking at proof that someone had counted on exactly that. His loyalty had been profiled. His patience had been turned into a weakness. His silence had been predicted. RM closed the company message and deleted the draft they had sent. "No," Jin looked at him. "No what?" RM's voice was quiet, but every person in the room felt the floor shift under it. "We don't adjust their statement. We don't negotiate, we don't wait for approval." He looked at all of them. "We go live." J-Hope blinked. Live, Taehyung whispered. Now, Suga's eyes sharpened. That's nuclear, RM nodded. That's why they won't expect it. Jin looked at Jimin, then Jungkook. Can they handle that? Jimin answered before anyone else. We don't have to tell everything, but people need to see we're not divided. Jungkook nodded slowly, even though pain flickered across his face. They need to see I didn't leave him. Jimin squeezed his hand. They need to see we chose to stand together. J-Hope's eyes filled, but his voice steadied. Then all 7 of us. RM turned to Taehyung. Can you handle being on camera? Taehyung's mouth tightened. I can handle being honest. Jin nodded once. Good answer. Suga opened the laptop fully again. We need a clean account, no accusations beyond what we can prove, and someone recording locally in case the stream gets cut. RM looked at Jungkook. Are you strong enough to sit up? Jungkook tried to shift and immediately winced. Jimin's face hardened. He doesn't have to perform pain for anyone. Jungkook looked at him softly. I'm not performing, I'm showing up. The words settled between them. Jimin understood. He hated it, but he understood. Jin helped adjust Jungkook's pillows. J-Hope dimmed the room light. Taehyung closed the curtain. Suga set the laptop on a tray table and checked the connection. RM typed one final message to their independent lawyer, attaching the evidence summary, then turned the phone face down. Jimin sat in his wheelchair beside Jungkook's bed. Jin stood behind him. J-Hope stood beside Taehyung. Suga sat near the laptop. RM stood in the center, not as spokesman alone, but as the first shield. Before Suga pressed the button, Jungkook leaned slightly toward Jimin. Are you scared? Jimin looked at the camera waiting on the dark screen. Then he looked at Jungkook. Yes. Jungkook nodded. Me too. Jimin's voice softened. Then don't let go. Jungkook's fingers found his again under the edge of the blanket, hidden from the camera but not from the members. I wasn't planning to. Suga looked up. Ready? Nobody said yes. They just stayed. That was the answer. The live stream started. For 3 seconds, the screen showed 7 silent faces in a hospital room, and the entire world stopped guessing. At first, nobody spoke. That silence became the hook sharper than any statement could have been. Millions of people clicked in expecting panic, denial, damage control, maybe one tired sentence from RM while the others stayed hidden. Instead, they saw all 7 of them. Jimin in a wheelchair beside Jungkook's hospital bed. Jungkook pale but awake, sitting upright with effort, his hand hidden under the blanket but his eyes fixed forward. Jin standing behind Jimin like a guard who had already decided he would burn every polite bridge if needed. Suga beside the laptop, expression calm enough to frighten anyone who knew him. J-Hope with red eyes and a straight back, the kind of sadness that had turned into resolve. Taehyung standing close, face bare and serious, no attempt to soften the fear. RM in the center, shoulders squared, phone off, script unread. The chat moved too fast to read. Hearts, tears, questions, panic, apologies. Accusations, but none of them looked at it. RM looked straight into the camera. We are speaking without company approval. That was the first sentence. It landed like a door being kicked open. Jin's jaw tightened behind Jimin. J-Hope inhaled slowly. Suga's eyes moved briefly to the connection status. Stable. RM continued. Today, edited footage involving Jimin and Jungkook was circulated online. The clip does not show the full situation. Jungkook did not abandon Jimin. He returned, stayed with him, and helped before emergency services arrived. Jungkook's eyes flickered, but he did not look away. Jimin felt the tension in him, the need to apologize again, the instinct to take blame even while being defended. Jimin spoke before that instinct could swallow him. I want to say this myself. RM stepped slightly aside. The camera framing shifted as Suga adjusted it. Jimin's face filled more of the screen. He looked tired, bruised. Real in a way fans almost never saw. I collapsed after rehearsal, Jimin said, voice quiet but clear. Before that, Jungkook and I argued. That part is true. But the reason we argued was not what people online are saying. He paused, feeling every member in the room around him. For weeks, I was receiving threats using private material that should never have existed outside protected archives. I was scared. I made bad choices because I thought pushing Jungkook away would protect him and the others. Jungkook turned his head slightly toward him, eyes wet. Jimin kept looking at the camera. It didn't protect anyone. It hurt him. It hurt me. It hurt our team. The chat became a blur of shocked messages. RM's phone started vibrating on the table, then another phone, then another. Nobody answered. Jimin continued. There is an internal privacy breach. Evidence has been given to legal representatives and investigators. We will not release private footage or private details that were stolen from us, because doing that would repeat the harm. Suga's expression did not change, but his hand moved to start a local recording backup. Jimin breathed in, then said the line he had been afraid of since waking. Jungkook was not the reason I was hurt. Jungkook's face broke for half a second. He looked down, lips pressed together. Jimin turned toward him, forgetting the camera for a moment. Look at me. Jungkook did. Jimin's voice softened, but everyone heard it. You were the reason I made it through. Nobody in the room moved. Online, the chat exploded, but in that room, the sentence sat quietly between two people who had almost lost each other to a lie. Jungkook blinked hard. He looked like he wanted to speak, failed once, then tried again. I left the building after the argument, he said, voice rough. The camera shifted slightly toward him. That part of the clip is real, but I came back because I knew something was wrong. When I found Jimin, he was already collapsing. I stayed with him until help came. His hand tightened under the blanket. I should have told the members what I knew earlier. I thought I needed proof first. That was my mistake. Jin stepped forward immediately. No. Jungkook looked at him. Jin's eyes were sharp, but his voice shook. Your mistake was thinking you had to bleed before anyone would believe you. Jungkook lowered his gaze. The chat moved faster. Taehyung spoke next, not planned, not polished. Stop blaming one member to protect another. His voice trembled, but it carried. We are not sides. We are not teams inside the team. We are 7 people who were watched, pressured, and pushed into silence. J-Hope nodded beside him. And please don't attack random staff, fans, or each other. That won't help us. It will only make the person who did this stronger. Suga leaned toward the camera. We are keeping evidence private for legal reasons and to protect stolen personal material. But the breach is real. The manipulation is real. The edited clip is real. The story built from it is not. Jin exhaled, then spoke with the bluntness only he could carry without making it sound cruel. We are angry. We are hurt. We are also together. Anyone waiting for us to turn on each other can keep waiting. RM looked at him, and despite everything, there was a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. Then RM faced the camera again. We will not be answering questions tonight. Jimin and Jungkook need medical care. We ask fans to wait for verified updates and not spread stolen or edited material. We will speak again when we can. He was about to end it when Jungkook suddenly said, Wait. Everyone looked at him. RM paused. Jungkook's breathing changed. He looked at Jimin first, asking without words. Jimin felt the question. Are you okay if I say more? Jimin nodded. Jungkook looked back at the camera. There is something I need to say clearly. Jimin told me to stay away because he was trying to protect me. I stayed close because I was trying to protect him. Both of us were scared. Both of us were wrong in different ways. His voice cracked, but he kept going. But don't turn our fear into hate. Not toward him, not toward me, not toward the members. He swallowed. Please. That please was not idle polished. It was human. It was tired and wounded and almost too honest. RM ended the live stream before anyone could unravel more. The screen went dark. For a second, no one spoke. Then every phone in the room erupted. Calls, messages, alerts, staff, lawyers, media, family. The world had heard them, and now the world was answering. Jin grabbed the closest phone and silenced it. I hated that. J-Hope let out a shaky breath. Me too. Taehyung sank into the chair by the wall, hands covering his face. Suga checked the stream recording. Backup saved. RM looked at the view count frozen on the screen and went pale despite himself. That was more people than some award shows. Jin muttered, Great. Our hospital room had better ratings than our comeback. No one laughed at first. Then J-Hope did, just once, broken and relieved, and that tiny laugh let everyone breathe for half a second. Jimin turned toward Jungkook. How's your pain? Jungkook tried to shrug, immediately regretted it and winced. Manageable. Jin pointed at him. Lie again and I'll call the nurse. Jungkook looked down. Bad. Better. Jimin's eyes softened. You should sleep. Jungkook looked at him. You first. Jimin almost smiled. Still competing? Always. The small softness between them lasted only 10 seconds before RM's phone rang again, this time from their independent lawyer. He answered on speaker. Saw it, the lawyer said, voice urgent. You did the right thing, but you need to prepare. The company is furious. They're claiming you violated contract communication clauses. Jin said, let them be furious. The lawyer continued, that's not the worst part. Someone has just released another file. The room froze. Jimin's stomach dropped. Jungkook's eyes darkened. RM's voice went quiet. What file? The lawyer hesitated. It's not the old practice footage. Suga leaned forward. Then what is it? The lawyer exhaled. It's an audio clip, supposedly of RM agreeing to keep the privacy breach quiet. Everyone turned to RM. RM looked like the air had been punched out of him. Jin said immediately, "Fake." The lawyer replied, "Maybe edited, maybe taken out of context, but it's spreading fast." J-Hope looked at RM. "Taehyung." RM did not speak. That scared Jimin, because if it were completely false, RM would have said so instantly. Instead, the leader stood there, face drawn, eyes lowered, like the trap had finally found him exactly where the hidden file said it would. Make him choose between the group and disclosure. Jungkook's voice cut through the room. "What did you agree to?" RM closed his eyes. For one terrible second, nobody breathed. Then RM opened them and said, "I thought I was protecting you." Those 6 words did more damage than any leaked clip. "I thought I was protecting you." Not because they sounded guilty, because they sounded familiar. Jimin had said the same thing in different words. Jungkook had lived inside that excuse for hours. Jin had used it all day with every locked jaw and blocked door. J-Hope had smiled through fear to keep everyone from falling apart. Taehyung had given Jungkook a car and called it help because he was scared Jungkook would go alone anyway. Suga had stayed quiet about the missing archive file because he did not have proof. Every person in that room had protected someone badly, but RM was the leader. When his protection failed, it became history faster. Jungkook stared at him from the bed. "Taehyung," he said, voice low, "what did you agree to?" RM looked at the floor for a moment, then lifted his head. 3 weeks ago, Han contacted me separately." Jimin went still. "The same time he contacted me." RM nodded, and the guilt in his face deepened. He said there had been an attempted breach involving old internal files. He said the company had contained it but needed members to avoid emotional instability while security handled the source. Jin's eyes narrowed. Emotional instability. RM gave a bitter, humorless breath. That was the phrase. Suga's jaw tightened. They profiled the wording too. RM continued. He didn't show me the footage. He didn't tell me Jimin was being directly threatened. He told me there was sensitive material involving multiple members that could be misinterpreted if it leaked. J-Hope's voice was careful. "And you believed him?" RM looked at him, pain flashing across his face. "I believed the risk, not him." That distinction mattered, but it did not save him. Jimin's voice was barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell us?" RM's eyes moved to him, and the answer was already there before he spoke. "Because he said if too many people knew, it could trigger the leak. He asked me to keep everyone calm and avoid internal conflict until the security team finished tracing it." Suga said. "And the audio?" RM swallowed. "He recorded a call where I said we should keep it quiet until we had a confirmed source." Jin's face went white with anger. "That's what they leaked." The lawyer's voice came from the phone on the table. "A cut version." In the clip, it sounds like Namjoon agreed to hide the breach from the members and fans to protect the company. Taehyung stood up slowly. "Did you mention the company?" RM nodded once. "I said we couldn't expose unverified internal issues without risking the group's position." Taehyung flinched. RM looked at him. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds like you chose the system," Jungkook said. The room went cold. Jimin turned to Jungkook quickly. "Jungkook." But Jungkook's eyes stayed on RM. He was not shouting. That made it worse. "Did you know Jimin was being threatened to push me away?" RM shook his head. "No." "Did you know they were using me as leverage?" "No, but you knew something private was at risk and you still kept quiet." RM closed his eyes briefly. "Yes." Jin stepped forward. "Jungkook, he just said he didn't know the full situation." Jungkook's voice cracked. "None of us knew the full situation because everyone kept deciding who deserved to know what." That silenced Jin too. Jimin felt the words land inside his own chest. Jungkook was not only angry at RM, he was angry at all of them, at Jimin too, at the pattern that had almost destroyed them. RM accepted it without defense. "You're right." Jungkook looked away, breathing harder. Pain was making his temper thinner, or maybe truth was. J-Hope moved closer to the bed. "Jungkook, don't push too hard, you're wound." Jungkook laughed softly, bitterly. "That's what we do, right? Don't push. Don't ask, don't make it worse. Wait quietly until someone else tells us what happened." J-Hope stopped. Taehyung's eyes filled again. Suga looked at Jungkook with a kind of understanding that did not soften anything. RM stood there and took it. That was the hardest part to watch. "I made the wrong call," RM said. "I thought if I held the center, I could keep the damage contained, but I was being managed too." Jin turned his anger toward the air because there was nowhere safe to put it. "They set us up to blame each other," Suga nodded. "And it's working." The sentence cut through the room like a warning. Everyone felt it. The trap was still active. The old footage had targeted Jimin and Jungkook. The new audio targeted RM. Next, it could be Jin, J-Hope, Suga, Taehyung. Any one of them could be pulled into the center and made to look like the weak link. Jimin looked at Jungkook, then RM. We need to respond before this becomes the new story. The lawyer said, I agree, but carefully. Written clarification is better. Do not go live again tonight. Jin muttered, because apparently our hospital live show wasn't enough. The lawyer ignored that. Namjoon, do you have the full original call? RM shook his head. Numberhand called me through a company line. Suga sat up straighter. Company line logs may still exist. RM looked at him. Can we get them? Suga's mouth tightened. Not legally by ourselves. Jin said, I hate that sentence. J-Hope looked toward the hallway. Police. RM nodded. We request the call record through investigators. Jungkook said quietly, that takes time. Everyone turned to him. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear and hard. They released that audio right after our live. That means they're watching the reaction and choosing who to damage next. If we wait, they'll release another. Taehyung whispered, what do we do then? Jungkook looked at RM. For a moment, the anger was still there. Then something else moved through it. Loyalty, wounded but alive. Haeyoung tells the truth before the edited version finishes spreading. RM's expression shifted. Jungkook. Jungkook's voice stayed rough. Not as leader, as you. Jimin understood immediately. The first statement had been all 7 standing together. This had to be different. If RM responded like a company-trained leader, the trap would use that. The leaked audio painted him as someone hiding behind responsibility. He had to step out from behind it. RM sat down slowly. For the first time all day, he looked exhausted in a way leadership usually did not allow. I don't know how to do that without making it worse. Jin's voice softened. Then don't do it alone. RM looked up. Jin continued, you think you're the only one who knows how to carry something ugly without dropping it. You're not. J-Hope nodded. We help. Suga added, we also edit, because some of you talk like you're writing court poetry under stress. RM almost smiled, but it disappeared quickly. Jimin said, tell people Han contacted you about an alleged breach, that you were misled about the scope, and that you were never told members were being threatened. Taehyung added, say you regret not telling us. RM looked at him. Taehyung's voice shook, but he held eye contact. Because you do. RM nodded slowly. I do. Jungkook looked down at his hands. And say we're not accepting any more edited clips as truth. Suga typed as they spoke, shaping the statement into something direct. Not polished, not defensive. Human. When he finished, RM read it quietly, then changed one sentence himself. I take responsibility for my silence, but I will not accept a lie built from that silence. The room went still. Jin nodded once. That's it. The lawyer approved after a quick read with 3 warnings they all barely heard. RM posted it from his personal account. The reaction was instant. Some people apologized. Some people doubted. Some demanded proof. Some called it brave. Some called it too late. The world did what the world always did. It took a human wound and tried to make it fit inside a comment box. RM put the phone down and covered his face with both hands. Nobody rushed him. After a moment, J-Hope crossed the room and placed a hand on his shoulder. Then Jin. Then Taehyung. Suga stayed where he was, but his silence was not distance. It was permission. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook's anger had not disappeared, but it had changed shape. He looked less like he wanted to fight RM and more like he wanted to fight the thing that had made RM a target. I'm still angry, Jungkook said quietly. RM lowered his hands and looked at him. You should be. Not just at you. I know. At myself too. Jimin squeezed Jungkook's hand. No, Jungkook looked at him. You don't get to decide that for me. It stung, but Jimin knew he deserved it. Okay. Jungkook's face softened slightly because Jimin had not argued. That was new. Maybe that was the beginning of repair. Then Suga's laptop chimed. He looked at the screen and went completely still. Jin noticed first. What now? Suga did not answer immediately. He turned the laptop so RM could see. RM read whatever was there and his face changed again, but this time not with guilt, with disbelief. That's impossible, RM whispered. J-Hope stepped closer. What is? Suga looked at Jimin, then Jungkook. The hidden folder has a final access signature. Someone opened it tonight before Jungkook copied it. Jungkook frowned. Han, Suga shook his head slowly. No, Taehyung's voice was barely audible. Then who? Suga's eyes lifted to the room, and for the first time all night he looked afraid. It was accessed using one of our member credentials. The silence that followed was worse than any accusation, because suddenly the enemy was not just inside the company. The evidence said the enemy might be inside the 7. Nobody spoke for a long time after Suga said it. Member credentials. The phrase hung in the hospital room like smoke from a fire nobody could see yet. It did not mean one of them had done it. Everyone knew that. Passwords could be stolen. Tokens could be cloned. Old devices could stay logged in. A system could be forged. Suga would be the first to say that if anyone else had said the sentence with accusation in their voice. But the damage did not need certainty. Suspicion only needed a crack, and the room already had too many. Jungkook's hand slowly loosened around Jimin's. Jimin felt it immediately, and it hurt more than it should have. Not because Jungkook was pulling away from him specifically, but because his body had reacted before his trust could catch up. RM stared at Suga. Which credential? Suga did not answer fast enough. Jin's voice sharpened. Yoongi. Suga looked at the screen again, jaw tight. It points to Taehyung. The room turned. Taehyung froze near the window, face empty at first, then wounded so fast it was painful to watch. Me. J-Hope moved toward him instantly. No, that doesn't mean. It says me. Taehyung's voice cracked. Suga closed the laptop halfway, like he could physically reduce the harm. It says your old device token was used. Taehyung shook his head. I don't even know what that means. Jin stepped in front of him slightly. It means nothing until we understand it. Jungkook's eyes narrowed, but not at Taehyung. Old device, Suga nodded. A registered tablet from years ago, last active before tonight was 18 months back. RM's expression tightened. The tablet you lost during the overseas schedule. Taehyung blinked, then memory hit him. I didn't lose it. Staff said it was packed with the equipment and then never found. J-Hope's face darkened. I remember that. Jin said, they told us it was wiped. Suga opened the laptop again, typing fast. Apparently not well enough. Taehyung's breathing became uneven. So someone used my device to access the folder. Or used its saved credential, Suga said. But yes. Taehyung looked around the room, eyes shining with panic and hurt. You don't think I did it? It was not a question, it was a plea. Jin answered first, immediate and fierce. No, J-Hope said, never. RM said, no, T. Suga looked up. No, Jimin said, no. Only Jungkook was silent for 1 second too long. Taehyung saw it, so did everyone. Jungkook noticed too late, then said, no, I don't think you did it. But the pause had already landed. Taehyung's face changed, not anger at first, pain. Then anger because pain needed somewhere to go. You hesitated. Jungkook sat up slightly, wincing. I was thinking. About whether I would sell you out. About why your credential would be there. That's not what I asked. Jungkook's eyes flashed. Then don't ask like you already decided my answer. Jimin's chest tightened. Stop. But they were both already too raw. Taehyung stepped closer to the bed, voice shaking. I gave you the car, I helped you when everyone else wanted you to stay, I believed you. Jungkook's face twisted. And I got caught because Han knew exactly where I was going. Taehyung went still. What does that mean? It means someone knew more than they should have. Jin snapped. Jungkook. Jungkook looked at him, immediately regretting the sentence but too hurt to take it back cleanly. I didn't say it was him. Taehyung laughed once, broken and disbelieving. You didn't have to. J-Hope stepped between them, anger rising now too. Enough, this is what they want. Taehyung looked at him. I know what they want, I just didn't know Jungkook would give it to them so fast. Jungkook flinched. Jimin looked down at their hands. Jungkook's fingers had fully pulled away now. The hidden wound between them widened again, not because love had disappeared, but because fear had found a new mask. RM stood. Everyone stopped talking for 10 seconds. His voice was not loud, but it carried enough command that the room obeyed. He counted silently, eyes closed. 1, 2, 3. Jimin could hear Jungkook breathing, Taehyung's shaky inhale, Jin's restless movement, J-Hope near tears again from the pressure of holding everyone together. Suga's fingers still on the laptop, probably tracing the access log further while everyone's emotions collided around him. At 10, RM opened his eyes. We are not doing their work for them. He turned to Suga. Can the token location be traced? Suga nodded slowly. Maybe. It pinged from inside the hospital network. Everyone froze again. Jin whispered, tonight. Yes, Suga's voice dropped. 23 minutes before Jungkook copied the drive. Jungkook's face changed. That means whoever used it was here. Jimin looked toward the closed door. The hallway suddenly felt too close. J-Hope moved to the door and locked it. Taehyung's anger faltered, replaced by fear. Here as in this floor, Suga typed again. No, not the floor, administrative wing, hospital conference room network. RM's gaze sharpened. Who had access there? Jin answered before anyone else. Company executives, lawyers, hospital admins. Jimin remembered the manager with the tablet that morning, the staff behind him, the way he had said rumors needed to be controlled before Jimin had even understood the truth. "The manager," Jimin said. RM looked at him. "Which one?" "The one who came in this morning. He had a tablet. He said the company needed to control the situation." Jin nodded. "Manager Choi." J-Hope looked sick. Choi was in the conference room with legal. Suga's eyes narrowed. Choi also had access to member device records during the last renewal cycle. RM cursed softly. Jungkook said he could have used T's old token. Taehyung looked at him. The hurt was still there, but now Jungkook's voice was focused on the real target, not him. "I'm sorry," Jungkook said quietly. Taehyung's jaw trembled. "You should be." Jungkook nodded. "I am." It was not enough. Of course it was not enough. But it was a hand stretched across a crack before the crack became a canyon. Taehyung looked away, not forgiving yet, not leaving either. Suga kept typing. "There's more. The token didn't just access the hidden folder, it uploaded something." RM leaned in. "Uploaded what?" Suga opened a log detail, then went very still. "A scheduled release package." Jin's voice dropped. "Meaning," Suga looked at him, "meaning another leak is already queued." J-Hope's hand tightened on the door handle. "Can you stop it?" "I don't know where it was sent yet." Suga worked faster. "It's routed through a media distribution server, delayed release." RM asked. "How long?" Suga's face hardened. 40 minutes. The room erupted in low, controlled panic. The lawyer was still on the phone and began speaking quickly about injunctions, emergency orders, platform contacts. RM issued instructions. Jin called hospital security. J-Hope messaged the police contact outside. Taehyung stood frozen for 2 seconds, then moved beside Suga, reading whatever he could even though he did not understand half of it. Jungkook tried to get out of bed. Jimin caught his wrist. "Don't." Jungkook looked at him. "If Choi is here, you can't even stand." "Watch me." Jimin's grip tightened. "No." Jungkook's eyes burned. "You don't get to protect me by trapping me in bed." Jimin stared at him, the words hitting too close to everything that had already happened. Slowly, he released Jungkook's wrist. But instead of letting him move, he said, "Then don't protect me by destroying yourself." Jungkook stopped. The anger in his face cracked. Jimin's voice lowered. "We said no one goes alone. That includes you trying to crawl into a fight with stitches." Jungkook looked away, breathing hard. "I hate this." "Me too. I hate being useless." Jimin's eyes softened. "You're not useless because you're hurt." Jungkook's mouth trembled slightly, but he forced it still. "I don't know how to do that." "Do what?" "Be protected." The room seemed to quiet around that sentence even though everyone was still moving. Jimin looked at him, and for the first time all night he saw the deepest wound under Jungkook's actions. Not recklessness, not pride, fear of being the one who needed saving. Jimin held out his hand again. This time Jungkook stared at it longer before taking it. Their fingers locked, not hidden now. Taehyung saw it. Jin saw it. RM saw it. No one looked away. Suga suddenly said, "Found the package metadata." Everyone turned. "What is the leak?" RM asked. Suga's face tightened. "It's not footage." J-Hope stepped forward. "Then what?" Suga looked at Jimin, then RM, then Jungkook, like he hated the answer before saying it. "It's a resignation letter." Jimin's blood went cold. "What?" Suga turned the laptop toward them. On the screen was a document formatted with company letterhead, dated for tomorrow morning, with Jimin's typed name at the bottom. It stated that due to personal health, emotional conflict, and regret over harm caused to the team, Park Jimin would suspend all activities indefinitely. Jin's voice shook with fury. "They forged it!" RM's face went white. Jungkook stared at the screen like he had stopped breathing. Taehyung whispered, "They're trying to remove him." Jimin looked at the fake letter, and suddenly the whole plan became clear. The edited clip, the old footage, the RM audio, the Taehyung credential, the group suspicion. The company statement blaming emotional stress. It was all leading here. If fans believed Jimin and Jungkook had caused a crisis, if RM looked complicit, if Taehyung looked suspicious, if the members looked divided, then tomorrow morning Jimin's fake withdrawal would look tragic but believable. A clean sacrifice. One member removed to protect the machine. Jimin felt the old fear rise one last time, but this time it met something stronger. Rage, not loud, not reckless, precise. He looked at RM. "Stop the release." RM was already moving. "We're trying." Jimin shook his head. "No, I mean stop it with me." Jungkook turned toward him. "Jimin." Jimin looked at the camera set up still on the table from the live. His body was weak, his head ached, his memories still had gaps. But the fake letter had made one thing painfully clear. Someone was trying to write him out of his own life. Jimin's voice became quiet, but everyone heard the steel inside it. If they want a resignation letter from me, I'll give them a message instead. Jin understood first. Another live, the lawyer on the phone immediately said. I strongly advise against, Jimin cut in. They have 40 minutes, I need 5. RM looked at him for one long second. Leader, brother, strategist, friend. Then he nodded. Jungkook's hand tightened around his. I'm doing it with you. Jimin looked at him. You can barely sit. Jungkook's answer was immediate. Then I'll barely sit next to you. Taehyung stepped forward. His eyes were still hurt, but his voice was firm. All 7. Suga closed the fake resignation letter and opened the stream software. 3 minutes to set it clean. J-Hope locked the door again and stood beside it like no one would pass him alive. Jin adjusted Jimin's wheelchair closer to Jungkook's bed. RM contacted the lawyer and police at the same time. The machine had tried to erase Jimin with a document. Now Jimin was about to answer with his own face, his own voice, and all 6 members beside him. And somewhere inside the hospital, the person holding the next leak had only 40 minutes left to learn what happened when the 7 stopped asking permission. The second livestream did not start with silence this time. It started with movement. Jin adjusting the wheelchair so Jimin could sit close enough to Jungkook without bumping the bed rail. J-Hope standing by the locked door, eyes fixed on the hallway through the small glass panel like he could feel trouble coming before it arrived. Taehyung pulling the curtains tighter, then turning his phone face down because one more flood of comments would tear his focus in half. Suga working fast at the laptop, not calm because he felt calm, but calm because anger had turned him precise. RM stood behind him with their lawyer still on the phone, speaking in short sentences now. Yes, we know the risk. Yes, record everything. Yes, send the emergency notice anyway. Jungkook watched Jimin from the hospital bed, trying to hide the pain in his side and failing. Jimin saw it every time Jungkook breathed too deeply. He hated that even now, with a forged resignation letter counting down toward release, a part of him wanted to forget the whole world and tell Jungkook to lie down. But that was how the trap worked. It forced them to choose between love and strategy, between protection and truth, between one person's wound and the group's survival. Jimin was tired of choosing from the options someone else had written. Suga looked up. 36 minutes until the scheduled package releases, unless legal gets it frozen first. Jin said, that's too long. Suga nodded. Exactly. RM turned to Jimin. You don't have to speak for 5 minutes, say one clear thing, say the letter is fake before it appears, that breaks the credibility. Jimin nodded, then looked at the fake document on the laptop screen one more time. Park Jimin would suspend all activities indefinitely, due to emotional conflict, due to regret. Due to harm caused. The wording was disgusting because it sounded like him on his worst days. That was what made it dangerous. Whoever wrote it had not simply forged a letter. They had studied the way guilt lived in his chest and dressed it in official language. Jungkook's voice was low. They knew what would sound believable. Jimin looked at him. Yeah, that's what scares me. Me too. Jungkook's fingers twitched on the blanket, searching without asking. Jimin reached over and took his hand. This time he did not care if the camera would see. The first live had hidden their joined hands under fabric because they were still afraid of how people would interpret closeness. Now, after everything, hiding felt like giving Han one more victory. Jungkook looked down at their hands. His face softened, but only for a second. They're going to use this too. Jimin squeezed once. Let them try. The words surprised both of them. Jimin was not fearless. His body still felt wrong. His head still ached behind his eyes. Every time he remembered the old practice footage, shame tried to crawl back into his throat. But the fake resignation had done something the threats could not. It had crossed from exposure into erasure. They were not just trying to embarrass him. They were trying to remove him and make him sign his own disappearance. That made his fear smaller than his refusal. Suga checked the feed. Ready. RM looked at everyone. All 7 visible. Jin moved behind Jimin, one hand on the wheelchair handle. Taehyung stood on Jungkook's other side, still wounded from the earlier suspicion but present. J-Hope left the door only after securing a chair against it, then stood beside RM. Suga angled the laptop so the frame caught them all. The lawyer's voice came through RM's phone, tense. Keep it brief, Jin muttered. He keeps saying that like we've ever listened under pressure. RM shot him a look, but it almost eased the room. Almost. Suga pressed the button. The live stream opened, and this time the comments exploded before anyone spoke. Viewers came in already shaking from the first live. Some had seen the fake RM audio. Some had not. Some had come to defend. Some had come to doubt. Some had come because the internet loves a fire more than it loves the people trapped inside it. Jimin looked into the camera and did not wait for RM. There is a forged resignation letter scheduled to be released under my name. The room behind him became still. Online, the chat froze for one strange half-second before bursting again. Jimin continued, voice clear, not loud, not dramatic, just final. I did not write it. I did not sign it. I am not leaving because someone else decided my pain is useful. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly beside him, like those words had hit somewhere deep. Jimin kept going. A document is being prepared to make it look like I am stepping away because of conflict with Jungkook and because I harmed the team. That is false. The letter is fake. The story is fake. The guilt they are trying to put in my mouth is not mine. RM's expression shifted behind him, pride and worry together. Jimin looked down once, then back at the camera. I made mistakes. I hid threats. I pushed away someone who was trying to help me. I will answer for that to my members, not to whoever stole private material and tried to turn my fear into a public confession. Jungkook's hand tightened around his. Then Jungkook spoke, voice rough but steady. I am sitting here because I chose to be here. Jimin did not force me into anything. He did not manipulate me. He did not cause this. The people who edited clips, forged documents, and used private pain as a weapon caused this. His jaw tightened. If you see that resignation letter, know it is a lie before you even read the first line. RM stepped forward. We have already sent the forged document and related evidence to legal representatives and investigators. We are asking platforms and media outlets not to publish stolen, forged, or manipulated material. We are also asking fans not to spread it, even to defend us. Do not help the people doing this by carrying their weapon further. J-Hope leaned slightly into frame. Please, protecting us does not mean attacking each other. Taehyung's eyes stayed on the camera, hurt still visible but controlled. And don't use our names to create more suspicion between us. We are handling what happened inside this room together. Suga added, if another clip appears, another audio appears, another document appears, ask who benefits from releasing it right now. Ask why private material is being shown instead of verified facts. The timing is not accidental. Jin's voice came last, low and clear. They thought if they made us scared enough, we would sign whatever story they gave us. They were wrong. The chat rolled too quickly to read, but Jimin did not need to read it. He had said what mattered. The resignation letter was dead before release. The story had lost its cleanest weapon. Suga glanced at the monitor. Connection unstable, he said under his breath. RM saw it. Rap! But before he could end the stream, a pounding hit the door. Once. Twice. Hard enough to shake the chair J-Hope had placed against it. Everyone turned. A voice came from the hallway, urgent and controlled. Open the door, this is company legal. Jin's eyes went dark. Of course it is. The pounding came again. Jungkook tried to sit straighter and immediately grimaced. Jimin squeezed his hand to keep him still. RM looked at the camera, decision flashing across his face. Instead of ending the stream, he turned the laptop slightly toward the door, leaving the feed live. State your name, RM called. Silence. Then the voice outside changed, less polite. You are violating contract terms and interfering with internal procedure. Suga's mouth twitched without humor. That's not a name. J-Hope stood firm by the door. We have police on this floor. The voice outside replied, and we have authorization from corporate counsel to secure company property. RM's eyes moved to the laptop, then to the camera. He understood the moment instantly. If they ended the live stream, whatever happened next could be rewritten. If they kept it live, the world would witness pressure in real time. The connection flickered again. Suga whispered, they may cut the network. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back. Neither of them said anything. They did not have to. The first rule remained. No one goes alone. RM faced the door and spoke clearly enough for the live to hear. No one enters this room without police present. The hallway went quiet. Then a different voice answered, calm, familiar, and close enough to turn Jimin's blood cold. Namjoon SSI, let's not make this uglier. Director Han. Jimin's fingers locked around Jungkook's hand. Jungkook's body went rigid. Jin stepped in front of the wheelchair. Taehyung's face hardened. J-Hope's hand stayed on the chair blocking the door. Suga kept the feed live despite the warning flashing on the screen. RM did not move. It already is ugly, he said. We just stopped hiding it. Then the live stream cut to black. For 2 seconds after the feed died, nobody moved. The laptop screen showed a frozen frame of RM facing the door, then a spinning error symbol, then nothing. The room lost the strange protection of being watched by millions, and the silence that followed felt more dangerous than the knocking. Outside, Han said nothing at first. Maybe he knew the stream had cut. Maybe he had arranged it. Maybe he was smiling. Jimin imagined that calm face in the hallway and felt his stomach twist. Jungkook shifted beside him, pain forgotten under anger. He cut the network. Suga was already moving. Hospital Wi-Fi is down, cellular jammed or overloaded, local recording still saved. Jin looked at him. Can we broadcast again? Not from here. J-Hope pressed his ear near the door without opening it. There are at least 4 people outside. RM picked up the phone connected to the lawyer, dead. The call had dropped too. Taehyung checked his own phone, no signal. They isolated the room. Jin let out a furious breath. Inside a hospital. Suga's voice was flat. They're desperate. Han finally spoke from the hallway, his voice soft enough that anyone watching from outside might call him reasonable. Open the door and we can prevent further harm. Jimin laughed once before he could stop himself. It was not a funny sound. That's what you said the first time. The room went quiet. Han heard him. Jimin SSI, I know you're frightened. Jungkook's eyes turned lethal. Don't talk to him. Han ignored him. You are being influenced by people who do not understand the consequences of what they're doing. Jin snapped. You mean his members? Han replied. I mean people reacting emotionally to a corporate crisis. RM took one slow step toward the door. You forged his resignation. A pause. Then Han said, I did not forge anything. Suga looked at the laptop. Technically, Choi might have pressed the upload. Jin glared at the door. Then we'll yell at him next. Han continued. A draft transition document was prepared in case Jimin chose to step away for health reasons. That is standard procedure. Jimin's face went cold. You dated it tomorrow. No answer. You put my name on it. Silence. You wrote my guilt into it. Han's voice lowered. Because guilt is what the public will understand. Jungkook moved too fast. He tried to swing his legs off the bed, face twisting with pain, and Jimin immediately stood halfway from the wheelchair to stop him. Room reacted at once. Jin caught Jimin's shoulder. J-Hope rushed to Jungkook. Taehyung pushed him back gently. Jungkook clenched his teeth, breathing hard. Let me go. Jimin's voice shook with anger. No, he's right there. And that's exactly why you're staying. Jungkook stared at him, trembling from pain and rage. You expect me to sit here while he talks about your guilt like he owns it? Jimin leaned closer, eyes wet but fierce. Yes, because he wants you to become the proof. That stopped Jungkook. The words hit him in the deepest place, where instinct had been trained into a trap. If he burst through that door, if he attacked Han, if even one person caught 1 second of him looking violent near an injured Jimin, the entire false narrative would rise again. Jungkook looked away, breathing hard, humiliated by the truth of it. Jimin softened immediately. I know, Jungkook whispered. I hate him. I know. I hate that he knows how to use me. Jimin's voice broke. Then don't let him. Jungkook closed his eyes. J-Hope kept a hand near his shoulder, not holding him down, just reminding him he was not alone in his own body. Outside, Han spoke again. The police are no longer in the hallway. Hospital administration has agreed to let company legal handle this internally. RM turned to Suga. Suga checked the door camera feed on the hospital tablet J-Hope had found earlier. It was blank. Hallway camera down. Taehyung's voice went cold. So he's lying or he moved them. Jin looked at RM. Either way, we need out. RM nodded. Not through the door. Jimin looked around. The room had 1 main door, 1 bathroom, 1 narrow window that did not open, and medical equipment attached to 2 injured members. They were not escaping like a movie. They were trapped in the most ordinary way possible, with contracts, locks, and bodies that could not run. Suga suddenly looked toward the wall behind Jungkook's bed. Service panel. Jin frowned. What? Old private rooms sometimes have maintenance access behind oxygen lines. Not enough for a person, but enough to reach cabling. RM understood. Can you restore outside signal? Suga stood and moved carefully around Jungkook's bed. Maybe not, but I can plug directly into the hospital internal line if they didn't cut physical access. Jin stared at him. Why do you know this? Suga pulled the panel edge open with a metal clip from the IV stand. Because I don't trust buildings. J-Hope whispered, that is somehow both disturbing and comforting. While Suga worked, Han's tone changed outside. If you continue refusing entry, we will classify the drive and all copied materials as stolen corporate property. Jungkook opened his eyes. There it is, RM replied through the door. Evidence of a crime is not corporate property you can hide. Han answered, you are artists, not investigators. Jin's smile was sharp and humorless. And yet we found more than your investigators. Jimin's hand went to the inner hoodie pocket where the original drive still rested. He could feel its hard edge through the fabric. That tiny object had become the center of a war over truth. But Jimin was starting to understand something. The drive mattered, but it was not the only proof anymore. Their faces had been proof. Their statements had been proof. The world had already heard enough to question the clean story. Han wanted the drive because he still believed control lived in files. Jimin now knew control also lived in refusal. Taehyung stepped closer to the bed, his eyes still on the blocked door. Han! His voice was quiet, but it carried. Why my credential? The hallway went silent. Everyone turned to Taehyung. J-Hope whispered, T. But Taehyung did not stop. You used my old device token, why mine? Han did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was almost gentle. Because people expect you to act from emotion. Taehyung's face tightened. So you thought they'd believe I betrayed them? I thought they would doubt you long enough. Jungkook flinched like the sentence had struck him personally. Taehyung looked at him and all the hurt from earlier returned, but now it had context. Han had not needed Jungkook to fully believe Taehyung was guilty. He only needed one hesitation, one crack, one look. It had worked for a moment. That was the cruelty. Taehyung stepped closer to the door. J-Hope reached for him, but Taehyung shook his head. You know what's funny? Taehyung said, voice trembling. You studied us and still got us wrong. Han said nothing. Taehyung continued. You thought emotion made me weak, but emotion is why I came back to this room. Emotion is why Jungkook apologized. Emotion is why Jimin stopped hiding. Emotion is why Namjoon told the truth even when it made him look bad. You call that leverage because you don't know what loyalty feels like from the inside. Jimin stared at him, chest tight. Jungkook looked down, shame and gratitude crossing his face. Jin's eyes softened. J-Hope wiped at his cheek quickly. RM's shoulders lowered like Taehyung had given him a breath he did not know he needed. Suga, still working at the panel, muttered, good speech, keep him talking. Taehyung almost laughed, but it came out shaky. Han's voice outside was colder now. Loyalty will not protect you from consequences. RM answered before Taehyung could. No, but neither will your title. Suga suddenly froze. Got line access. Everyone turned. The laptop showed a small connection icon blinking back to life, not through Wi-Fi, but through a direct hospital network port. Suga's fingers flew over the keyboard. It's weak, enough to send files, maybe enough for audio. RM moved fast. Send local recordings to the lawyer and police. Already doing it. Jin looked toward the door. Can we call out? Suga plugged in the hospital tablet, rooted something, cursed under his breath, then said, one line. Audio only, pick fast. RM said, police. But Jimin said no. Everyone turned. He looked at the door, then at the laptop. Call the livestream backup channel. RM stared at him. Jimin, if we call police, Han delays. If we go public with audio only, he loses the hallway. Jungkook looked at him with a mixture of fear and awe. You want him heard? Jimin nodded. He loves context so much, let's give him some. Jin smiled slowly. I raised you well. RM looked at Suga. Suga shrugged. Technically messy, emotionally satisfying, legally terrifying. The lawyer would have screamed if the phone still worked. It did not. RM made the decision himself. Do it. Suga connected the audio stream through the backup channel. The screen showed no video, only a black background with a live indicator. The viewer count began climbing instantly. Outside, Han did not know yet. RM faced the door and raised his voice. Director Han, for the record, are you denying that your team prepared a resignation letter under Jimin's name? Han replied, impatient now, I am saying transition documents are standard in crisis planning. RM continued, are you denying that edited private footage was used to pressure Jimin into distancing himself from Jungkook? Han's voice sharpened. I am saying personal attachments created vulnerabilities that had to be managed. Jungkook's eyes burned. Jimin held his hand firmly. RM's voice stayed steady. Are you denying that Taehyung's old device credential was used to create suspicion inside the group? Han said. Suspicion already existed. We simply understood where it would appear. The live audio count jumped. Hundreds of thousands, then more. J-Hope covered his mouth. Taehyung stared at the laptop. Jin looked like he might laugh from pure fury. RM asked one final question. And are you still asking us to hand over evidence of your actions as corporate property? Han answered, cold and clear, I am asking children who forgot who built their cage to stop pretending they are free. The room went silent. The sentence traveled through the live audio into the world before Han understood what had happened. Suga leaned toward the door and said, almost pleasantly, you're live. The hallway outside went dead quiet. Then from somewhere beyond the door, someone cursed. Not Han. Another voice. Manager Choi. Footsteps scrambled. Papers rustled. A phone began ringing. Han finally spoke, but his calm was gone. "Open this door." RM looked at J-Hope. J-Hope removed the chair slowly, not because Han demanded it, but because they heard heavier footsteps now. Real ones, police voices, hospital administration. Their lawyer shouting from down the hall. The door opened from the outside before anyone in the room touched it. 2 officers entered first. Behind them, Han stood pale with fury, Manager Choi beside him looking terrified, and the company legal team frozen like people who had walked onto a stage without knowing the curtain was up. Jimin looked at Han through the open door. He had imagined this man as a monster for weeks, but now he looked smaller than the fear he had created. Jimin's voice was quiet, but it carried. "You called it a cage." Han said nothing. Jimin's hand tightened around Jungkook's. "We're opening it." The hallway became a courtroom without a judge. Police officers separated Han from the room while the company lawyers tried to speak over each other, each one suddenly careful not to say anything that might become another recording. Hospital administration looked furious in the way only people can look when they realize their building had been used as a battlefield. Manager Choi kept glancing toward the elevator like a man calculating whether running would look worse than staying. It would. Jin stood just inside the room with arms crossed, blocking any direct line toward Jimin and Jungkook. J-Hope stayed beside him, but his eyes never stopped moving. Taehyung remained near Jungkook's bed, quiet after what he had said to Han, as if the strength had cost him more than anyone could see. Suga sat at the laptop, saving copies to 3 places, because trust had become expensive. RM spoke with the officers in a low, controlled voice, nomming every file, every event, every threat without letting anger make him sloppy. Jimin watched from the wheelchair. Jungkook watched him. That was the thing Jimin noticed first when the danger shifted outward. Jungkook was not looking at Han anymore. He was looking at Jimin like he was afraid Jimin might vanish now that the fight had moved beyond them. "I'm still here," Jimin said softly. Jungkook blinked. "What?" "You keep checking." Jungkook looked embarrassed for half a second, then too tired to hide it. "You collapsed once today. Technically yesterday now. Not funny." Jimin's mouth almost curved. "A little funny." Jungkook's expression said absolutely not, but his grip softened. The small, almost normal moment hurt more because it was surrounded by broken trust, police statements, and the knowledge that nothing after tonight would be simple. Outside the door, Han's voice rose for the first time. "You have no authority to seize internal company materials without proper legal procedure," the officer answered. "We have authority to preserve evidence related to alleged coercion, unauthorized surveillance, identity misuse, and document forgery. You can continue this with counsel present." Jin muttered, "That sounded beautiful." Suga said without looking up, "I want it as a ringtone." J-Hope gave him a look, but even he almost smiled. RM returned to the room, face drawn. "They're taking Han and Choi for questioning." Taehyung asked. "Arresting?" RM shook his head. "Not yet," Jin scoffed. "Of course not." RM lowered his voice. "This is bigger than them, the board authorization, the consultant firm, the archive access. It will take time." Jimin nodded. He had expected no clean ending. People like Han rarely stood alone, and systems rarely confessed because one door opened. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. "They'll try to bury it." Suga looked up. "They can try." RM sat down heavily in the chair near the bed, exhaustion finally catching him. "The live audio is already everywhere. The forged letter was stopped by 2 platforms after our legal notice and the public warning. One outlet still tried to publish a blurred version but took it down within minutes when fans recognized the wording from Jimin's live." J-Hope exhaled. "So it worked." "For tonight," RM said. That honest limit brought the room back to reality. For tonight, not forever. Not fully safe, just one attack stopped, one story interrupted, one cage door cracked open. Jimin looked toward the hallway where Han had stood. He said personal attachments created vulnerabilities. Jin's face hardened. "Don't repeat his trash." Jimin shook his head. "No, I'm thinking about it." Jungkook looked at him carefully. "Why?" "Because he was half right." The room stiffened. Jungkook's hand tightened, not in comfort this time, in fear. Jimin continued before anyone could misunderstand. "Not that closeness is weakness, but it can be used if we're too afraid to talk about it honestly." RM watched him, silent. Jimin looked at each member. "I hid because I was ashamed." Jungkook acted alone because he thought proof mattered more than his safety. Namjoon Hyung kept quiet because he thought he had to hold the center. Yoongi Hyung reported something and stayed alone with doubt. T helped Jungkook in secret. Hobe Hyung tried to keep everyone calm until he almost disappeared inside that role. Jin Hyung protected me so hard he almost stopped hearing me. Jin looked down. Jimin's voice softened. I'm not saying this to blame us. I'm saying if we don't admit the pattern, someone else will use it again. The room went quiet. That was different from the public statement. Harder. This was not for fans, not lawyers, not Han, not the company. This was the truth that had to survive after the scandal. J-Hope sat slowly at the foot of Jungkook's bed. I don't know who I am when I'm not trying to make everyone okay. The confession surprised even him. His eyes went shiny, but he kept speaking. Today, every time I smiled, I felt like I was lying, but when I stopped smiling, I felt like I was failing. Taehyung moved closer and touched his shoulder. You don't have to be the light all the time. J-Hope laughed once, wet and quiet. Tell that to my face, it does it automatically. Jin's expression softened. We'll remind it. Suga leaned back. I kept thinking if I said something without proof, I'd create paranoia, so I waited. Turns out silence also creates paranoia. RM nodded, guilt still heavy. I thought leadership meant absorbing uncertainty. Jin looked at him. Sometimes leadership means admitting you're uncertain before everyone else starts drowning quietly. RM accepted that with a slow nod. Taehyung looked at Jungkook then. The room felt it before he spoke. And you? Jungkook looked up. Taehyung's voice trembled. You hesitated when you saw my credential. Jungkook closed his eyes. I know. That hurt. I know. No, listen. Taehyung stepped closer, not angry in the same way now. I understand why. I hate that I understand why, but it still hurt. Jungkook opened his eyes and the apology in them was immediate. I'm sorry, I let fear answer before trust did. Taehyung swallowed hard. That's the right apology. Jungkook looked down. I don't know how to fix it. Taehyung's mouth twisted. You don't fix it tonight. You remember it next time. Jungkook nodded. I will. It was not dramatic forgiveness. It was better. It was real enough to continue. Then Jin cleared his throat, uncomfortable with feelings that did not include yelling at villains. My turn, apparently. Jimin looked at him. Jin avoided his eyes for a second, then forced himself to meet them. I'm sorry I kept saying no to your phone, no to your questions, no to you moving. I was scared if I let you choose anything, you'd choose pain. Jimin's face softened. I did choose pain. Jin's eyes filled. Yeah, but it was yours to choose. Jimin reached for him with his free hand. Jin took it quickly, like he had been waiting all day. I don't want you to protect me less, Jimin said. I just need you to protect me with me. Jin nodded, unable to speak for a moment. RM looked at all of them, the weight in his face shifting into something quieter. Then we need new rules. Not crisis rules, living rules. Suga raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a meeting, Jin groaned. Please don't schedule emotional maintenance. J-Hope actually laughed this time. RM almost smiled. Not a schedule, a promise. If someone receives a threat, we tell at least 2 others. If someone is asked to keep quiet by staff, legal, management, anyone, we bring it to the group. If one of us wants to handle something alone, the answer is no. Jungkook said softly, no one goes alone. Jimin looked at him. No one disappears to protect someone else. Jungkook's gaze lowered. That one's about me. And me, Jimin said. Jungkook looked up. The words passed between them like a bridge. RM nodded. And no more letting other people define what our relationships mean. Taehyung's eyes flicked to Jimin and Jungkook's joined hands. That includes fans too. The room went quiet again. This was the most delicate truth. Fans loved them, defended them, celebrated them, sometimes understood them deeply. But love from far away could still become a cage when it demanded certainty about private things. Jimin looked down at Jungkook's hand in his. I don't know what people will call this. Jungkook's voice was quiet. They always call it something. Yeah. What do you call it? Jimin looked at him. The room faded a little, not gone because they had promised no more hiding, but softer. Jungkook's eyes were tired, red, still afraid. Jimin thought of the old practice room, the dark, the banana milk, Jungkook staying beside him because he did not know how else to love someone except by refusing to leave. He thought of all the years after, all the almost conversations, all the jokes used as shields, all the ways they had protected each other badly and beautifully. I call it ours, Jimin said. Jungkook's breath caught. He looked like the answer had hurt and healed at the same time. Jin looked away first, pretending to check the hallway because emotions had limits. J-Hope wiped his face openly now. Taehyung smiled a little sad but warm. Suga stared at the laptop like it was suddenly very interesting. RM looked down, giving them privacy without leaving them alone. Jungkook whispered, That's dangerous. Jimin nodded. So was letting them name it. Jungkook's fingers tightened around his. Then ours. It was not a confession for the internet. It was not a label for anyone else to consume. It was a claim. Private witness chosen. For the first time all day, Jimin felt something inside him settle. Not peace. Peace was too far away, but direction. Then the door opened and the independent lawyer stepped in with a face that ended the fragile moment instantly. I need everyone to listen carefully. RM stood. What happened? The lawyer looked at Jimin first, then Jungkook, then all seven. Han is claiming he acted under direct instruction from a board emergency committee. He says the forged resignation was not the final step. Jimin's blood chilled. Jin's voice dropped. What was? The lawyer's mouth tightened. If Jimin refused to step away, the next document was prepared for Jungkook. Jungkook went still. Jimin's hand clenched around his. The lawyer continued, voice heavy. A termination recommendation for violent conduct and breach of trust. The room turned to ice. The trap had not failed. It had simply had a second blade. Jungkook did not react at first. That was how Jimin knew the words had hit too deep. A termination recommendation. Violent conduct. Breach of trust. The phrases were so official, so carefully chosen, that they seemed to drain the person out of him before anyone could defend him. For a man who had spent the whole day fighting, running, bleeding, and still trying to stand between Jimin and danger, being called violent was not just an accusation. It was a theft of meaning. They were taking his protection and renaming it as threat. They were taking his panic and calling it proof. They were taking every second he had returned, every second he had stayed, and twisting it into the reason he should be removed. Jimin felt Jungkook's hand go cold. No, Jimin said immediately. Jungkook did not look at him. His eyes were fixed somewhere ahead, unfocused. Jungkook. Still nothing. Jin turned to the lawyer. Is it released? Not yet, the lawyer said. We found it in the materials seized from Choi's tablet. It was prepared as a contingency if Jimin publicly denied resignation. RM's face darkened. Which he did, the lawyer nodded. That means they may still try to push it through another channel. J-Hope's voice shook with fury. They plan to remove one of them either way. Suga's expression went flat and dangerous. Not one, both if needed. Separate the emotional core, force the rest into compliance. Taehyung whispered, the fastest destabilizer. Everyone remembered the audio. Isolate the Jion connection first. Jungkook finally blinked. His voice came out low, almost empty. Maybe that's why this keeps happening. Jimin turned sharply. Don't, Jungkook swallowed. Maybe being close to me makes things worse for you. Jimin's eyes widened. Don't say that. Jungkook looked at him then, and the pain in his face was worse than anger. Look at the pattern, Jimin. They threatened you because of me. They made you push me away. They used me to make you collapse. They used my reaction to build a case. Now they have a termination document ready because I couldn't stay calm. Jimin's voice broke. You were stabbed. I was reckless before that. You were scared. So were you. That doesn't make you guilty. Jungkook laughed once, but it was all hurt. Funny, you wouldn't let me say that to you earlier. That silenced Jimin because it was true. The room felt too crowded and too exposed for a wound this personal, but no one left. They had promised not to hide anymore. Jungkook looked away. Maybe Han was wrong about everything except one thing. I am easy to use when it comes to you. Jimin felt that like a hand around his throat. And I'm easy to control when someone threatens you. So what? We let them decide that means we should disappear from each other. Jungkook's jaw tightened. I don't want you hurt because of me. I was hurt because someone used shame and fear, not because you cared. You don't know that. I do. How? Jimin leaned closer, ignoring the pain in his body. Because when I woke up, I asked for you before I remembered any of this. Jungkook froze. The words changed his face. Jimin continued, voice shaking now. Before the clip, before the old footage, before the threats, before Han, before the forged letter. I woke up scared and confused and in pain, and my body knew who I needed before my mind knew what happened. So don't sit there and tell me you are the problem. If you were the problem, my heart would not have looked for you first. Jungkook's eyes filled. He tried to look away, but Jimin held his gaze. I'm not letting them turn that into guilt. For a moment, Jungkook could not speak. Then he whispered, I don't know how to protect you without becoming what they say I am. Jimin's answer was immediate. Then stop protecting me alone. Jungkook's breath shook. Jimin held his hand tighter. Stand with me. Don't stand in front of me every time. Don't run ahead. Don't bleed first and explain later. Stand with me. Jungkook looked down at their hands. I can try. No, Jimin's voice softened. You can learn. The room stayed quiet because everyone understood the difference. Trying was what they had all done alone. Learning meant letting others correct you before love became damage. RM turned to the lawyer. What do we need to stop the termination document? The lawyer opened a folder. Publicly, you already weakened the violent conduct narrative with the 2 streams and the live audio. Legally, we need medical records confirming Jungkook's injuries, hospital security footage if recoverable, police notes from the B2 incident, and a statement from Jimin that Jungkook did not harm him. Jimin said instantly, "Done." The lawyer nodded. "It must be formal." "I'll sign." Jungkook's head snapped up. "No." Jimin stared at him. "Excuse me." Jungkook winced, not from his wound this time. "I mean no, not if it makes you look like you're defending me under pressure." Jin groaned. "Oh my God, the 2 of you." J-Hope put both hands over his face. Taehyung looked at the ceiling. Even Suga sighed. RM said, exhausted, "Jungkook, we just discussed standing with, not in front." Jungkook closed his mouth. Jimin raised an eyebrow. "Can I choose to defend you?" Jungkook looked embarrassed now. "Yes. Thank you." Jin muttered, "Progress, painful but progress." The lawyer, who looked like she had entered a family therapy session inside a legal emergency, continued. "There is one more issue. The company may argue all public statements made tonight were emotionally compromised and medically unsound." Jin barked a laugh. "They're going to say injured people can't tell the truth." "They may try," the lawyer said. Suga leaned back. "Then we need witnesses not under medical care." RM nodded. "The 5 of us." Taehyung stepped forward. "And the hospital administrator." J-Hope added, "And the police who heard Han in the hallway." The lawyer nodded. "That helps." Jimin looked at RM. "Do we release anything else?" RM shook his head. "No more lives tonight." This time Jimin did not argue. The claim had been made. More exposure would not give them more control. It would only feed the machine. Suga closed the streaming window and disconnected the emergency line. Audio backup saved and sent. Jin said, "Good, now both of you are going to rest before I sedate you personally." Jungkook blinked. "You can't do that." "Watch me." Jimin almost laughed, then winced because laughing still hurt. Jungkook noticed immediately. "Are you okay?" Jimin gave him a look. "Don't start." "I'm not starting." "Your face is starting." Jungkook's mouth opened, then closed. Taehyung whispered to J-Hope, "They're back." J-Hope nodded, tears in his eyes and a tiny smile on his face. "Annoying, thank God." But rest did not come easily. The lawyer stayed for another hour taking statements. Police returned for signatures and preliminary questions. RM gave the longest account, stopping twice when guilt made his voice too tight. Jin sat beside him the second time without saying anything. J-Hope gave his statement with surprising calm until he described finding Jungkook collapsed against Jimin's wheelchair. Then his voice broke and Taehyung took his hand. Suga submitted the digital copies with timestamps, hash records, and a level of organization that made one officer ask if he had law enforcement experience. Suga said, "No, just trust issues." Nobody laughed, but the officer looked like he wanted to. Taehyung gave his statement about the old tablet, the car, the credential, and Jungkook's hesitation. When asked if he believed Jungkook suspected him, Taehyung paused. Jungkook looked down, ashamed. Taehyung finally said, "For 1 second, fear got between us. That is what the attacker intended. It did not last." Jungkook looked up, eyes wet. It was not forgiveness fully, but it was protection. That mattered. Jimin gave his statement last. By then the sky outside the window had changed from black to the first dirty blue before morning. He was exhausted beyond language, but when the officer asked whether Jungkook had harmed him, his voice was clear. "No, Jungkook did not harm me. Jungkook returned to help me. Any document saying otherwise is false." The officer asked if he had been pressured to make that statement. Jimin looked at the 6 men around him. Jungkook in the bed, Jin behind him, RM beside the lawyer. Suga with the laptop, J-Hope near the door, Taehyung by the window. "No," Jimin said. "For the first time in weeks, I'm not being pressured, I'm being heard." After the officers left, morning settled over the room with cruel normality. The world outside was still on fire. Headlines had already shifted. Some praised them. Some doubted them. Some outlets replayed Han's cage line with dramatic captions. Fans cried over Jimin's refusal to resign and Jungkook's wounded silence. Comment sections became battlefields, then prayer walls, then detective boards, then arguments again. Nothing online stayed pure for long. But inside the room, for one fragile hour, the 7 stopped talking. Jimin was moved back to his own bed only after Jungkook made a face so worried Jin threatened to tape both of them down. Jungkook stayed awake until he saw Jimin under a blanket again through the open door between their rooms. The staff had agreed to keep the door open now, with guards outside and no blue badges on the floor. It was childish maybe, needing to see each other across the hallway. But after a night of stolen footage, false documents, and locked doors, visibility felt like mercy. RM sat in a chair between the two rooms and finally fell asleep with his arms crossed. Jin leaned against the wall, eyes closed but not truly sleeping. Suga dozed with the laptop still open on his knees. J-Hope sat beside Taehyung, their shoulders touching, both too tired to pretend they were fine. Jungkook turned his head toward Jimin's room. Jimin was awake too. Of course he was. Their eyes met across the dim hallway. No cameras, no statements, no audience. Jungkook lifted his hand slightly from the blanket, two fingers barely moving. A small sign, still here. Jimin answered the same way, still here. For the first time since waking up, Jimin let his eyes close without feeling like the world would be rewritten while he slept. But just as sleep finally started pulling him under, RM's phone vibrated on the chair between the rooms. Once, then again. RM did not wake. Jin did. He opened one eye, reached for it, and froze. The sender was unknown. The message had no greeting, no threat, no file attached. Just one sentence. Han was never the one in charge. Jin stared at the screen as morning light touched the hospital floor, and the open door between Jimin and Jungkook suddenly did not feel safe enough. Jin did not wake RM immediately. For 3 seconds, he simply stared at the message on RM's phone. Hopping exhaustion had twisted the words into something worse than they were. Han was never the one in charge. The sentence sat there clean and quiet, almost polite, and somehow that made it more frightening than every threat before it. Threats had emotion. This felt like information. Jin looked toward the open doorway where Jimin lay in the room across the hall, eyes closed at last, face pale against the pillow. Beyond the other side, Jungkook was also still, though Jin could tell from the tension in his shoulders that sleep had not taken him fully. The hallway was dim with early morning, washed in that strange hospital blue where everything looked forgiven even when nothing had been fixed. RM slept in the chair between the rooms, head tilted down, phone still in Jin's hand. Suga had finally dozed with one hand near the laptop. J-Hope and Taehyung were folded into the small couch like two people who had run out of ways to be brave. Jin wanted, more than anything, to throw the phone into a drawer and give them 10 minutes where nobody had to be hunted. But the message glowed brighter than mercy. He touched RM's shoulder. Namjoon! RM woke instantly. Leaders did not wake slowly during a crisis. His eyes opened, unfocused for half a second, then sharp. Jin handed him the phone without speaking. RM read it. His expression did not change at first. That scared Jin more. Then RM stood. The movement woke Suga, who opened his eyes like he had never truly slept. What? RM showed him. Suga read the message, then sat up fully. Unknown number, RM nodded. Trace. Suga took the phone and connected it to the laptop with the kind of tired precision that came from anger running on fumes. Jin looked toward Jimin's room. Do we wake them? RM's eyes followed his. Jimin was breathing evenly now, finally resting after fighting his way through a night no injured person should have had to survive. Jungkook's eyes were still closed, but his hand was curled near the blanket like he was holding onto something in a dream. RM whispered, Not yet. Jin looked back at him. We made rules. RM closed his eyes briefly. No more deciding who could handle what. No more silence dressed as protection. The rule had been born only hours ago, and already mercy was tempting them to break it. Suga's voice cut in softly. It may not matter. The sender used a masked route, but the message didn't come through the same channel as the threats. RM turned. Meaning this might not be the person attacking us. Jin frowned. A helpful stranger. Suga's mouth tightened. Or another trap wearing a different coat. J-Hope stirred on the couch. What happened? Taehyung woke right after him. Blinking into the tension before anyone answered, Jin saw the moment both of them understood rest was over. J-Hope stood, rubbing his face. No more faces like that before coffee. Taehyung's voice was rough. What is it? RM showed them the message. J-Hope read it once, then again. Taehyung went very still. Han was never the one in charge. Jin folded his arms. Apparently our nightmare has management. Suga kept working. There's a second line of metadata hidden in the message. Not sender identity, more like a breadcrumb. RM moved closer. To what? Suga clicked through a temporary file, then stopped. A board meeting schedule. Everyone froze. J-Hope looked toward the door. For when? Suga's face tightened. Today, 9:00 a.m. Jin checked the time. 6:18, RM's jaw flexed. Agenda, Suga scrolled. Emergency governance session. Topic, member crisis containment, contract stabilization, public response strategy. Taehyung whispered, they're meeting about us. Jin laughed once, cold. Nice of them to wake up early after trying to ruin our lives. RM's expression darkened. This schedule is internal. Whoever sent the message has access. J-Hope lowered his voice. Could be someone on the board trying to warn us. Suga looked skeptical. Or trying to pull us into a room where we lose control again. RM did not answer. His gaze moved to Jimin's room. Jimin's eyes were open now. Of course they were. He had heard enough, or maybe he had felt the room change through the thin hospital walls. He looked at them from the pillow, exhausted but awake. Tell me, he said. No one moved for a second. The old habit reached for them. Not yet. Later. Rest first. Then Jungkook's voice came from his bed, hoarse and quiet. Tell us. Jin closed his eyes like the universe had personally insulted him. You two have terrible timing. Jimin pushed himself up slightly. Jungkook tried to do the same and winced. J-Hope went to him immediately, not stopping him, just helping him adjust the pillow. That was the new rule in motion. Not control. Support. RM stepped into the space between both open rooms so both Jimin and Jungkook could see him. We received an anonymous message. It says Han was not in charge. Jimin's face lost what little color he had regained. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. Then who? Suga answered from the laptop. The message included access to an emergency board meeting schedule for this morning. Jungkook's jaw tightened. They're going to vote on what to do with us. RM nodded. Likely, Jin added, and by us, they probably mean how to keep everyone profitable while pretending nothing criminal happened. Jimin looked down. The fake resignation letter flashed across his mind. His typed name at the bottom, his guilt converted into company language. They planned this around the board. Suga nodded slowly. Han had authority because someone gave it to him, maybe not to forge documents directly, but enough to create the structure. Taehyung stepped closer to the doorway. Then we go above Han. Jin stared at him. You mean attend a board meeting after 2 hospitalizations and no sleep? Taehyung looked back at him. I mean stop letting them discuss us like we're not alive. Jimin's eyes lifted. I agree. Jin pointed at him immediately. Of course you do. You agreed to leave a hospital bed during an active security threat. Your judgment is not currently winning awards. Jungkook said, I agree too. Jin turned on him. You got stabbed and still chased a man through a parking garage. Jungkook looked down. Technically, he chased me back. Not the defense you think it is. J-Hope touched Jin's arm. Taehyung. Jin stopped, breathing hard. His anger had become fear again, and everyone knew it. RM looked at the lawyer's empty chair from earlier, then at the clock. Don't physically go anywhere unless doctors clear transport and police provide escort. Jimin opened his mouth, but RM raised a hand. That is not control, that is logistics. Suga nodded. We can appear by video, better anyway. No one can claim we stormed in emotionally. Jin muttered, tragic, I was ready to storm beautifully. J-Hope gave him a tired look, then focused on RM. What do we say? RM looked at Jimin and Jungkook. We don't beg them not to punish us. We don't ask for kindness. We present evidence, state boundaries, and demand independent investigation. Jungkook's voice was low. And if they refuse, Suga answered, then the anonymous sender gets a better headline than the one they expected. Taehyung looked at him. You want to leak the board meeting? Suga shook his head. No, I want them to know we could. Jimin watched the members gather again, no longer as scattered pieces reacting to attacks, but as a group building a response. It should have comforted him. Instead, grief rose in him so suddenly his chest hurt. All this time he had thought his secret was the thing that could destroy them. Now he understood the secret had only been a handle. The real weapon was the assumption that they would carry pain privately until it could be used against them publicly. He looked at Jungkook. Jungkook was already looking at him. The space between rooms felt too wide. I'm sorry, Jimin said softly. Jungkook's brows drew together. For what? For making you think you had to be the only one who knew how bad it got. Jungkook's face changed. The old practice room returned between them without needing to be named. Younger Jimin on the floor, younger Jungkook staying in the dark. A promise that had once saved them had later become a place where fear could hide. Jungkook swallowed. I wanted to be enough. Jimin's eyes filled. You were. That was the problem. You were enough for that night, but no one should have to be enough forever. Jungkook looked away, breathing unevenly. Jin stared at the floor. J-Hope wiped his face. Taehyung's lips pressed tight. Even Suga stopped typing for a moment. RM's voice softened. That's what we say today. Jimin looked at him. What? RM nodded slowly, as if the thought had formed fully only as Jimin spoke. We tell the board the old system worked because it isolated responsibility. One person holds the secret. One person holds the proof. One person holds the public voice. One person holds the smile. One person holds the anger. One person holds the doubt. One person holds the reckless protection. That ends now. Suga resumed typing faster. That's the spine. Jin frowned. The spine. The statement spine, keep up. Jin rolled his eyes but did not argue. J-Hope moved to Jimin's room and adjusted his blanket without asking too much. You'll need strength. Jimin looked up. For the meeting, J-Hope shook his head. For after. That was when everyone went quiet. Because after was the part none of them had fully faced. After the board. After the legal fight. After the headlines. After fans calmed down or didn't. After the world learned some version of the truth. After came living with what they had said to each other. After came rebuilding trust where fear had interrupted it. After came Jungkook learning not to run ahead. Jimin learning not to disappear behind a smile. RM learning that leadership did not have to mean silence. Jin learning protection could not become permission control. Taehyung learning forgiveness could include a memory of hurt. J-Hope learning he was allowed to be heavy. Suga learning proof was not the only way to ask for help. The meeting was not the ending. It was the first room where they would test the new rules under pressure. At 8:42, doctors cleared both Jimin and Jungkook for remote participation only, with strict instructions that Jin repeated louder than necessary. The lawyer returned with 2 associates, a secured tablet, and the expression of someone who had slept even less than they had. Police remained on the floor. The anonymous message was documented but not trusted. Suga prepared a clean evidence packet. RM drafted the opening statement. Jin reviewed it and removed anything that sounded too polite. J-Hope added the line asking fans and staff not to be used as shields. Taehyung added a sentence about stolen trust being a harm, not a strategy. Jungkook insisted on including that he had acted recklessly by pursuing evidence alone, but Jimin made him change the sentence to, I acted out of fear and urgency without enough support, because truth did not require self-destruction. Jimin added the final line himself. We are not refusing accountability. We are refusing a system that confuses control with care. At 8:59, the video call connected. The screen filled with faces in suits, some familiar, some not, all framed by expensive conference lighting and expressions that tried too hard to look concerned. For 1 second, Jimin felt small again. Hospital gown under hoodie. Bruises hidden under sleeves. Jungkook injured 2 doors away. The members exhausted around them. Then Jungkook's hand reached from the side of his bed across the narrow gap where the rooms had been arranged close enough for them to sit in the same frame. Jimin took it. The board chair looked at the screen and said, Before this begins, we need to establish order. RM leaned forward, voice calm. No, before this begins, you need to understand something. He looked at all 6 members, then back at the board. The order you built is the reason we are here. The boardroom did not expect to be challenged before the first agenda item. Jimin could see it in the tiny delays across the screen. A blink held too long. A pen stopping mid-note. A woman in gray looking quickly toward someone off camera. A man with silver hair leaning back like RM had spoken out of turn at a dinner table instead of at an emergency meeting where his members' private pain had been converted into strategy. The board chair, Mr. Kang, folded his hands. His face carried the smooth patience of someone who had spent years turning anger into minutes and minutes into decisions. Namjoon SSI, everyone here understands emotions are high. Jin made a sound under his breath. Suga glanced at him, a warning and agreement in one. RM did not take the bait. This is not an emotional complaint. This is a documented crisis involving unauthorized surveillance, misuse of archived material, forged documents, and internal coercion. Mr. Kang's mouth tightened slightly. Those are serious claims. The lawyer beside RM spoke before anyone else could. They are supported by materials already submitted to investigators. This meeting is being recorded by our side as well. The board's expressions shifted. Not enough for the public, but enough for the 7. People who believe they control the room dislike hearing that someone else has a copy. A woman named Director Seo spoke next. She had once smiled warmly backstage after an award show and told Jimin his performance was moving. Now her voice was cool. We are concerned that last night's unauthorized live streams may have escalated reputational harm. Jungkook's fingers tightened around Jimin's. Jimin looked at him once, then spoke before RM could answer for him. The harm was already escalated when a fake resignation letter was prepared under my name. Director Seo's gaze moved to him. That document has not been verified as a final corporate action. Jimin's face stayed calm. It had my name on it. Drafts can be prepared for multiple scenarios. Then who authorized a scenario where I disappear? The question cut cleanly through the screen. Director Seo did not answer. Mr. Kang stepped in. Jimin SSI, no one wanted you to disappear. The goal was to protect the group from unpredictable damage. Jungkook's voice entered, rough and quiet. By preparing to terminate me if he refused. Several faces changed. That had not been expected. Good. Jungkook continued, his posture stiff from pain but his eyes clear. You called it violent conduct before any investigation, before any medical report, before asking him what happened. Why was that draft ready? A younger executive looked down. Another shifted papers. Mr. Kang replied, we have to plan for public perception. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You plan to create it. RM let that land, then opened the evidence packet on screen. At 7:12 p.m. last night, a scheduled release package containing Jimin's forged resignation letter was uploaded using a credential tied to Taehyung's old device token. That device was reported missing under staff supervision 18 months ago. At 7:46 p.m., materials recovered from Manager Choi's tablet showed a secondary draft recommending Jungkook's removal under the language of violent conduct and breach of trust. At 8:03 p.m., Director Han referred to these materials as corporate property while attempting to retrieve evidence from injured members inside a hospital room. At 8:11 p.m. on a live audio feed, he stated that our cage had been built by the company. Jin leaned forward. That part was poetic for a criminal. Their lawyer gave him a look. Jin leaned back. What? It was. J-Hope spoke next, not with his usual brightness, but with steady grief. You keep saying damage like we are storms you manage, but the damage came from people with access, staff badges, old archives, internal schedules, board-authorized credentials. You gave someone tools to study us, and then you're surprised those tools became weapons. Director Seo said, no one here authorized personal harm. Suga looked at her. Then you authorized impersonal harm and hoped the distinction would protect you. The screen went quiet. Taehyung shifted closer to the camera. His voice was softer than Suga, but no less sharp. My old credential was used to make my members doubt me. Maybe only for a second, but that second hurt. Someone decided my emotions made me useful for suspicion. Which committee approved emotional leverage categories? Director Seo's face tightened. That language, if authentic, may come from an external consultant. Taehyung nodded. Who hired them? Again, silence. Jin smiled without warmth. Amazing how many things happen by themselves in this building. Mr. Kang's patience thinned. Let us be very clear, this board has protected this group for years. RM answered immediately. And we are acknowledging that protection became control. Mr. Kang's eyes hardened. You have benefited from that control. The words landed like a slap. For a second, nobody spoke. There it was, clean and ugly. The logic underneath every cage. We fed you. We built you. We protected you. Therefore, we own the door. Jimin felt Jungkook's hand tremble once, not from fear, from restraint. Jin leaned forward, but J-Hope touched his arm. RM held the silence long enough for Mr. Kang to hear what he had revealed. Then RM said, we benefited from hard work, staff who cared, fans who supported us, and members who gave everything. We did not benefit from being secretly profiled, threatened, or forged. Suga added, and if the business only functions when the artists are afraid, the business is already damaged. The board chair looked toward someone off screen. The lawyer beside the members spoke again. Our clients are requesting the following immediate actions. 1. Written confirmation that no resignation, suspension, or termination documents will be issued under any member's name without direct member authorization and independent counsel present. 2. Preservation of all relevant records, including board communications, consultant contracts, archive access logs, security badge records, and device token histories. 3. Suspension of Director Han, Manager Choi, and any personnel connected to the evidence chain pending independent investigation. 4. Appointment of an outside forensic team approved by both parties. 5. A public correction acknowledging edited footage and forged material without blaming member conflict. Director Seo inhaled sharply. That is extensive, Jin said. So was the blackmail. The lawyer continued. 6. Written assurance that all 7 members can access independent legal and mental health support without company monitoring. That one changed the room more than the others. Jimin felt it. The board felt it. Because that demand was not just about the scandal. It was about the future. It was about removing the invisible roots through which control had entered their private lives. Mr. Kang said, "We cannot approve all conditions in this meeting." RM nodded. "Then we cannot continue under current conditions." The sentence was calm, but it shook the air. Jimin looked at him. Jungkook looked too. Jin went very still. J-Hope's face tightened. Taehyung stopped breathing for a second. Suga did not react, but his eyes sharpened. The board understood before anyone said the word. Contract, activities, cooperation. The thing everyone had been afraid to touch because it held careers, staff jobs, public expectations, years of work, and the entire machinery of their lives. Mr. Kang's voice lowered. "Are you threatening non-compliance?" RM looked at the 6 members again. He did not answer alone. That was the new rule. Jin gave the smallest nod. Suga too. J-Hope swallowed and nodded. Taehyung's jaw tightened, then he nodded. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin looked back. They nodded together. RM faced the board. "We are setting boundaries for continued cooperation." Director Seo said, "You understand the consequences." Jimin spoke then, and his voice carried a calm that surprised even him. "That sentence used to scare me more." Director Seo looked at him. He continued, "I spent weeks afraid of consequences. If I told them, if I stayed close to Jungkook, if I didn't obey, if I remembered too much, if I spoke too loudly. Every threat was built on consequences. But last night I learned something." He looked at Jungkook, then the members. "There are worse consequences than losing control of a story. One is letting someone else write your life so neatly that even you start believing you should disappear from it." The boardroom remained silent. Jimin turned back to the camera. "I'm not disappearing." Jungkook's voice followed, quiet and firm. "And I'm not being used as the reason he should." Taehyung added, "I'm not accepting suspicion planted under my name." J-Hope said, "I'm not smiling through harm and calling it peace." Jin said, "I'm not letting protection become ownership." Suga said, "I'm not staying silent because proof makes people uncomfortable." RM said last, "And I'm not leading by absorbing lies until they poison us." The 7 statements landed one by one, not rehearsed perfectly, not polished, but aligned in the only way that mattered. Mr. Kang looked older now, not defeated. Men like him did not fall in one meeting, but he looked aware that the room had shifted beyond his script. The lawyer's associate slid a document into view. "We have prepared a memorandum of immediate protective demands. We are sending it now." Suga's laptop chimed as the file went out. For several seconds, the board members read, whispered, muted, unmuted, delayed. The members waited. Waiting had always been part of their life, but this waiting felt different. They were not waiting to be chosen. They were waiting to see whether the people who claimed to protect them would choose accountability over control. Finally, Mr. Kang unmuted. "We will agree to preserve records and suspend involved personnel pending review." RM did not speak. Their lawyer said, "All involved personnel." Mr. Kang's jaw tightened. "Director Han and Manager Choi immediately, others pending identification." Suga's eyes narrowed. "Convenient." The lawyer continued. "Independent forensic team." Director Seo said, "We will consider candidates." Jin leaned in. "Wrong word." The lawyer repeated, "Independent forensic team approved by both parties." A pause. Mr. Kang nodded stiffly. "Yes." J-Hope let out a quiet breath. The lawyer moved down the list. "Public correction." Director Seo looked like she was swallowing glass. "A statement can be drafted." RM said, "Not drafted to blame member stress." Mr. Kang replied, "A neutral statement." Jimin's eyes hardened. "Neutral is where you hide the knife." The board chair looked at him. Jimin did not look away. Mr. Kang finally said, "A factual statement." "By noon," the lawyer added. "That is unreasonable." Suga said, "So was forging a resignation overnight." Jin nodded. "We're all learning speed today." Director Seo looked toward the chair. Mr. Kang's mouth tightened. "By noon, pending legal review." The lawyer said, "Independent support without monitoring." The longest silence followed that demand. That told Jimin exactly how important it was. Finally, Mr. Kang said, "Approved in principle." RM shook his head. "In writing." The board chair's eyes met his. 2 versions of power stared at each other, one built by title, one built by trust that had almost broken and still chosen to stand. "In writing," Mr. Kang said. The call ended 20 minutes later with no celebration, only exhaustion. Nothing was solved, not fully. Agreements could be delayed. Statements softened. Records lost if they moved fast enough. But the first official wall had cracked. The board had been forced to answer them while they were together, represented, recording, and unwilling to be separated into emotional weak points. When the screen went dark, J-Hope sat back like his bones had finally noticed the night. Taehyung covered his face. Suga saved the entire meeting 3 times. Jin walked to the window and stared out, blinking hard. RM remained still, hands on the table, head bowed. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook was pale with pain, but his eyes were clearer. "You okay?" Jimin asked. Jungkook gave the smallest shake of his head. "No," Jimin nodded. "Me neither." Jungkook looked at their hands. "But you didn't disappear." Jimin squeezed. "Neither did you." Across the room, RM's phone buzzed again. Everyone froze. RM looked at the screen, and this time his expression did not turn fearful. It turned stunned. "It's the anonymous sender again." Jin spun around. "What now?" RM read the message aloud. "You forced them to preserve records. Good. Now look for the original authorization under Project Glasshouse." Suga's face changed instantly. "Project what?" Jimin felt the air shift. Jungkook's eyes darkened. The board meeting had not been the end. It had opened a deeper file with a name none of them had heard before, and somehow that name sounded less like a scandal and more like a system. Project Glasshouse. The name should have sounded ridiculous. It should have sounded like something from a spy drama, the kind of name people invent when they want bad decisions to feel strategic. But after a night of hidden cameras, forged letters, emotional leverage profiles, and a boardroom full of people who knew how to say harm without using the word harm, nothing sounded impossible anymore. Suga typed the name into the drive search first. No result. Then into the Kpop access logs. One partial hit, not a file name. A tag, Jailhouse Ref Archive. His face went still. RM leaned over. "What is it?" Suga did not answer immediately. He expanded the log. "It's old, older than Hands Access, older than the consultant firm." Jin came back from the window. "How old?" Suga scrolled. "First tag appears years ago." J-Hope's voice dropped. "During trainee days," Suga shook his head. "After debut, early growth period." That phrase alone pulled memories into the room. Small rooms. Cheap meals. Endless practice. Cameras everywhere because content was survival. Behind-the-scenes footage, logs, documentaries, staff recordings, security archives. Back then, everything had felt like proof they existed. Proof they were working hard. Proof they were worth watching. Nobody had the power to ask where all that footage went after it was filmed. Nobody had the language to say constant visibility could become a future weapon. Taehyung sat beside Suga, eyes fixed on the screen. "What does glasshouse mean?" RM looked toward the anonymous message. "A glass house is something you can see into." Jin's face hardened. "Or something people inside can't hide in." Jimin felt cold. The old practice footage had not been random. The hallway clips, dorm-adjacent feeds, emotional notes, private schedules, all of it suddenly seemed less like separate abuses and more like one archive built over time. A place where their lives had been stored until someone decided storage could become leverage. Jungkook looked at Suga. "Can you open the tagged archive?" Suga shook his head. "Not from the copied drive. It references a server path, not the contents." "Company server?" RM asked. "Probably retired or renamed, but if the board preserved records like they agreed, this tag matters." Their lawyer, still seated near the bed, leaned forward. "Do not attempt unauthorized access." Suga looked offended again. "I was breathing near a keyboard. I'm serious." "So am I, sadly." RM rubbed his face. "We need to hand Project Glasshouse to the forensic team and police." Jin's eyes flashed. "And trust them to find what the company wants hidden," the lawyer answered carefully. "That is why independent approval matters." Jimin listened, but his attention drifted toward Jungkook. Jungkook had gone too quiet. His eyes were distant, fixed not on the laptop but somewhere inside memory. Jimin knew that look. "What are you remembering?" Jungkook blinked. "Nothing." Jimin raised an eyebrow. Jungkook sighed, then winced. "Something from the old building." Everyone looked at him now. Jungkook seemed uncomfortable under the attention, but he continued. "There was a storage room near the old content office. Staff used to joke that it was the glass room because one wall had internal windows covered with blinds. I went in once by mistake looking for a charger." RM's face sharpened. "What was inside?" Jungkook frowned, trying to pull the memory through years of exhaustion. Hard drives, labeled boxes, old cameras, a computer tower. One staff member got angry when he saw me there. Not normal angry, scared angry. Suga typed something. Do you remember the staff member? Jungkook shook his head slowly. Not name, face maybe. Jimin's chest tightened. When was this? Years ago, around the time he stopped. Jimin knew before he finished. Around the time of the old practice room footage. Jimin's hand tightened. Jungkook looked at him, apology in his eyes for bringing the memory closer. Jimin shook his head slightly. Keep going. Jungkook breathed in. A week after that night, someone from staff asked me if I had taken anything from the storage room. I said no. They said some archive drives had been moved. I forgot about it because schedules were crazy. Suga looked at RM. If old drives went missing years ago, Han may not be the first person who extracted material. J-Hope's voice was quiet. Someone has had pieces of us for years. The words settled over them. Pieces of us. Not just clips. Not just data, moments, breakdowns, arguments, private jokes, exhaustion, tears. Maybe ordinary things too boring to weaponize until paired with the right headline. A glass house built from pieces. Taehyung stood suddenly and walked to the window, breathing hard. J-Hope moved to follow, but Taehyung raised a hand. I just need a second. J-Hope stopped. New rules. Support did not always mean chasing. Taehyung looked out at the city. Do you ever feel like there are versions of us out there that we never agreed to create? Nobody answered quickly because the question was too real. Jimin thought about younger him on the practice room floor. That version had belonged to the night itself, to Jungkook's quiet company, to a decision not to leave. Now a stolen copy existed somewhere, stripped of tenderness, ready to be turned into scandal. RM said softly, yes. Jin looked down, all the time. Suga's voice was low. That's what archives become when people forget humans are attached. The lawyer closed her folder slowly. This changes the scope. If Project Glasshouse was a long-term internal archive used for risk profiling, this becomes much larger than last night's events. Jin laughed coldly. Great, our trauma has a franchise. J-Hope gave him a warning look, but Jin's eyes were wet. Humor was the only way he could touch the horror without breaking. RM stood. Then we make sure the investigation scope includes it. The lawyer nodded. I'll file an addendum. Jungkook tried to shift again, jaw tightening from pain. Jimin immediately noticed. You need medication. Jungkook shook his head. I'm okay. Jin turned around so fast Jungkook actually looked nervous. Say that again. Jungkook closed his mouth. J-Hope pressed the nurse call button. Medication. Jungkook looked at Jimin like he had been betrayed. Jimin shrugged gently. Standing with you, not watching you suffer. Jungkook's expression softened despite the pain. You're enjoying the new rule too much. I plan to abuse it lovingly. Taehyung let out a small laugh from the window. It was fragile, but it was real. The nurse came in, checked Jungkook, adjusted Jimin's IV, gave both of them the kind of stern look only medical staff can give world-famous patients without caring about fame at all, and ordered the room quiet. Jin looked deeply impressed. Can we keep her? The nurse did not smile. Only if you all stop talking for 10 minutes. Suga whispered, impossible demand. She glared. He looked down. Understood. For 10 minutes they tried. The lawyer stepped out to make calls. RM answered messages in short, factual lines. Suga documented Project Glasshouse references. J-Hope sat with Taehyung near the window. Jin watched Jimin and Jungkook like a parent pretending not to. Jimin felt the medication pulling at him again, but his mind refused to fully rest. Across the hall, Jungkook's eyes were half closed, pain finally easing, but his hand remained turned toward Jimin. Not reaching, not demanding, just there. Visible. Jimin looked at that hand and thought of all the times they had reached for each other when cameras were around and turned it into a joke, a habit, a performance, a thing fans could laugh about without seeing the fear underneath. He wondered how many real things had survived by pretending to be unserious. He wondered how many times that had saved them and how many times it had cost them. Jungkook, he said quietly. Jungkook opened his eyes. That night in the practice room. Jungkook's expression changed. Jin looked up but did not interrupt. Jimin continued, voice low enough that it belonged mostly to Jungkook but steady enough for the room to hear. I told you not to tell the others because I was ashamed, but there was another reason. Jungkook watched him carefully. What? Jimin swallowed. I was afraid if they knew I almost quit, they would try to love me more carefully. J-Hope's face softened. Taehyung turned from the window. RM lowered his phone. Jimin looked at the ceiling because saying it while looking at them was too hard. I didn't want to become the fragile one. I didn't want every tired day after that to become a warning sign. I didn't want jokes to stop when I entered a room. Jin whispered, "We wouldn't have done that." Jimin looked at him with a sad smile. "You would have tried not to, that's different." Jin could not argue. Jungkook's voice was quiet. "I loved you carefully anyway." Jimin turned to him. Jungkook's eyes were open and honest, medication making his defenses thinner. "I thought if I was the only one who knew I could watch better, I thought that was protecting you, but maybe I was also protecting the version of me who got to be needed by you." The confession hit harder because it cost Jungkook obvious pain. Jimin's eyes filled. "You were needed." Jungkook nodded slightly. "I know, but sometimes I held onto that like it was my job." Jimin's throat tightened. There it was. The truth underneath the protector. Jungkook had not only been used by others, he had been trapped by the role he gave himself because love and identity had tangled too tightly. RM spoke softly from the doorway. "We all made jobs out of wounds." No one moved. That sentence described them too well. Jin the protector, J-Hope the light, Suga the proof keeper, Taehyung the feeler, RM the absorber, Jungkook the shield, Jimin the perfect survivor, jobs built from wounds. Jobs the company learned to monetize, jobs fans sometimes adored without knowing the cost, jobs they themselves had mistaken for character. Jimin wiped his face. "Then we quit those jobs before anyone else fires us from them." Jin pointed at him. "Careful with the word quit." Jimin actually smiled this time. "Fine, we resign from the unhealthy emotional positions." Suga nodded. "Terrible title. Good policy." Jungkook looked at Jimin, tired and almost smiling. "What are you then if not perfect survivor?" Jimin thought about it. The answer did not come easily. Then he said, "Alive." Jungkook's eyes softened. "Good." Jimin looked at him. "And you?" Jungkook exhaled slowly. "Still learning." "Also good." The room breathed with them. It was not healing exactly. Healing would take longer than one morning, longer than one statement, longer than one investigation. But it was the first time their pain had been named without being turned into a strategy. Outside, the city kept moving. Online, the story kept changing. Inside, 7 men sat with the wreckage and did not leave each other inside it. Then the lawyer returned, face pale again. Jin groaned. "I hate that face. Everyone stop having that face." She closed the door behind her. "The company statement is delayed." RM stood. "Why?" She looked at the laptop where Project Glasshouse still glowed in the search window. "Because the board has just received a legal notice from another party claiming ownership over part of the archive." Suga's expression sharpened. "Another party?" The lawyer nodded. "The external consultant firm." Jungkook's eyes darkened. Jimin felt cold again. The lawyer continued. "They're claiming Project Glasshouse was not merely internal. They say it was commissioned as a predictive behavior model, and they want access before any investigation proceeds." The room went silent. Predictive behavior model. Jimin looked at RM. RM looked at Suga. Suga looked at the screen like he was staring into a machine built from their lives. The glass house was not just a storage room. It was a model, a system designed to predict how they would break. No one spoke after the lawyer said predictive behavior model. The phrase was too clean for what it meant. A model sounded technical, distant, harmless in the way corporate language always sounds harmless before it touches a body. But Jimin understood it immediately. The spreadsheet had not simply listed their weaknesses. It had predicted reactions. Isolate Jungkook from Jimin, Jungkook overreacts. Pressure Jimin with old footage, Jimin withdraws. Implicate Taehyung, trust cracks. Leak RM audio, leadership destabilizes. Prepare forged resignation, public accepts sacrifice. If refusal occurs, trigger Jungkook termination narrative. They were not only being watched, they were being calculated. Jungkook whispered, "They ran us like scenarios." Suga's face had gone very still. "And last night proved the model worked enough to scare them when we broke it." RM looked at him. "Broke it how?" Suga turned the laptop toward them, pulling up the sequence of events. The expected chain was private threat, isolation, public confusion, member blame, controlled resignation. But we interrupted it at multiple points. Jimin publicly denied the false story before the resignation dropped. Jungkook did not become violent in the hallway. Taehyung confronted the planted suspicion without leaving. Namjoon admitted the audio context instead of hiding behind leadership. Hobei told fans not to attack. Jin protected without forcing silence. Jin blinked. "Is this your way of saying I had character development?" Suga ignored him, but one corner of his mouth moved. We became unpredictable when we started telling each other the truth in real time. J-Hope sat back slowly. So honesty is what broke the system. Taehyung looked at the screen. That sounds too simple. RM shook his head. Simple doesn't mean easy. Jimin felt the words settle. For weeks, the threats had made truth feel dangerous. Now he realized secrecy had been the more predictable path. Shame made him act alone. Fear made Jungkook act alone. Responsibility made RM act alone. Suspicion made the group splinter. The model had counted on all of that. It had not counted on pain being spoken before it became performance. The lawyer placed a document on the table. The consultant firm is called Asterion Risk. Suga's head lifted quickly. Asterion? RM frowned. You know it. Not directly, but I saw the name in the metadata on one of the reports. He opened the hidden folder again, then found a buried field. AR Behavioral Continuity Division. Jin stared. That sounds like a villain department. J-Hope whispered, behavioral continuity, like keeping us consistent. Taehyung's face twisted. No, like keeping us controllable. The lawyer nodded grimly. They specialize in reputation forecasting for high-value public figures. Officially, they analyze public risk. Unofficially, if these files are authentic, they may have built internal influence strategies using private material. Jungkook looked at Jimin. They're going to say it was for protection. Jimin nodded. Of course they are. RM leaned forward. Can they block the investigation? Delay, yes. Block, not if we push properly. The lawyer looked at all of them. But this expands beyond your company. It may involve contracts, data privacy, surveillance law, unauthorized psychological profiling, and possibly cross-border storage. It will be ugly. Jin laughed dryly. I miss when ugly meant a bad stage outfit. J-Hope looked at him. We had several. Jin pointed. Not the time, but true. A tiny exchange softened the room just enough to keep them from drowning. Then RM said, we need to decide how public this becomes. The room went quiet again. That was the real question. Public truth had saved them last night, but more public exposure could also feed the same machine. Fans would want details. Media would want villains. The internet would want names, timelines, screenshots, emotional clips, proof to consume. Jimin knew too well how quickly defense could become another form of taking. Suga said, we should not release the model details publicly. Jungkook looked surprised. Why? Because it includes private psychological profiles. If we describe them too specifically, we spread the harm. Jimin nodded. Agreed. Jin asked, then how do we make people understand? RM answered, we say enough. Independent investigation into unauthorized use of private archives and behavioral profiling. We don't feed the spectacle. Taehyung looked down. Will people believe that? J-Hope gave a tired smile. Some will, some won't. We can't build our truth around the people determined not to hear it. That sentence sounded simple, but coming from J-Hope it felt hard one. Jin looked at him proudly. Look at you, emotionally exhausted and wise. J-Hope sighed. I preferred being only handsome. That was never your only problem. For the first time, Jungkook laughed softly. It hurt him, so he stopped immediately, but everyone heard it. Jimin looked at him, and that small sound felt like sunlight through a crack in concrete. Not enough to warm the whole room. Enough to prove outside still existed. RM turned to the lawyer. Draft a public update with the company by noon if they comply. If they soften it, we issue our own correction again. The lawyer nodded. And Asterion? Suga said. Preserve everything. No direct contact unless through legal. They want access because they're afraid of what's inside. Jungkook's eyes darkened. Or because they want to delete it. RM looked to the officers outside the door. Then we push for immediate preservation order. The lawyer stepped out again to make the call. The room settled into a tense quiet, but this one had structure, tasks, boundaries, roles chosen, not imposed. Jimin looked at the members and felt grief again, but it no longer swallowed him whole. I need to say something before this becomes bigger, he said. Everyone turned. Jin immediately looked worried. Are you about to apologize for something that isn't your fault? Jimin almost smiled. Maybe partly. Jin groaned. I knew it. Jimin shook his head. Not like that. He looked at RM first. Taehyung, I was angry when I found out you kept quiet. RM nodded. You should be. I still am, Jimin said. RM accepted it. But I also understand how they used your fear of failing us. RM's eyes dropped. Jimin continued. Understanding doesn't erase it. But I don't want them to turn my hurt into distance from you. RM's face tightened, emotion rising. Thank you. Jimin looked at Suga. Yoongi Taehyung, next time you notice something missing, even if you don't have proof, tell us. Suga nodded. I will. Not because you failed, because I need to know we are allowed to be uncertain together. Suga's expression softened almost invisibly. Okay. Jimin turned to J-Hope. Hobi Hyung, when you stop smiling, I don't think you failed. J-Hope's eyes filled instantly. He laughed once, embarrassed. You're really attacking everyone personally this morning. Yes, continue. Jimin looked at Taehyung. T, you were hurt because Jungkook hesitated. You don't have to forgive that quickly just because we're in crisis. Taehyung looked at Jungkook, then back at Jimin. I know, but thank you for staying anyway. Taehyung's lips trembled. Where else would I go? Jimin turned to Jin last. Jin straightened like he was preparing for impact. Jimin's voice softened. Hyung, I know your love sometimes arrives as a locked door. Jin blinked. Jimin continued, I need doors open even when you're scared. Jin's face broke slightly. I'll try. No, Jimin said gently, echoing his own words to Jungkook. You'll learn. Jin stared at him, then nodded, wiping at his eyes with annoyed dignity. Fine, but I reserve the right to yell lovingly. Approved. Then Jimin looked at Jungkook. The room seemed to pull back around them. Jungkook watched him with eyes too open now, no shield left strong enough to hide behind. Jimin's voice became quieter. And you? Jungkook swallowed. Me. I don't want to be your emergency. Jungkook's face tightened. Jimin held his gaze. I want to be someone you love when nothing is on fire too. For a second, Jungkook looked like he had forgotten how to breathe. The sentence was not loud, not dramatic, but it reached the exact place all his protection had been built around. Emergency had become familiar. Fire had become proof. If Jimin was in danger, Jungkook knew who to be. If Jimin was simply there, safe, alive, choosing him without crisis, Jungkook had to learn a softer courage. His voice broke when he answered. I want that too. Jimin nodded, tears slipping now. Then when this is over, we don't go back to only talking when one of us is falling apart. Jungkook shook his head. No, and no more promises that make one person carry a secret alone. No more. And if I say go away when I'm scared, Jungkook's mouth trembled. I ask if you mean it. Jimin smiled through tears. Good. Jungkook looked down at their hands. And if I try to run into danger, Jin cut in, we tackle you. Jungkook looked up. I was going to say stop me gently. Suga said, you lost gentle privileges in B2. J-Hope nodded. Temporarily suspended. Taehyung added, pending independent investigation. Jungkook's laugh came again, small and pained, but real. Jimin laughed too, softer, and the sound moved through the room like something returning. Not everything, but something. At noon, the company statement finally released. It was not perfect. It was carefully worded, legal, colder than the truth deserved. But it acknowledged edited footage. It acknowledged unauthorized access to private archived materials. It confirmed Director Han and Manager Choi were suspended pending investigation. It denied the validity of any resignation or termination documents not directly authorized by members and council. It announced an independent forensic review. It asked the public not to circulate stolen materials. Fans dissected every word within seconds. Media outlets shifted again. Some called it historic. Some called it damage control. Some asked how much the members had forced behind the scenes. The 7 read it together in silence. Jin was the first to speak. I hate that it says concerns instead of harm. Suga nodded. Of course, RM exhaled, but it's on record. J-Hope closed his eyes. That matters. Taehyung whispered, Han's name is there. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Your resignation is dead. Jimin looked back. Your termination too. Jungkook's fingers found his again. For now. Jimin nodded. For now. That honesty did not scare him as much anymore. For now was not forever, but it was real. Doctors came and went. Lawyers called and returned. Police requested more statements. Families were notified carefully. The world outside continued spinning, but inside the hospital, the 7 finally entered the quiet after impact. Not peace. Impact had aftershocks, but quiet. By late afternoon, Jungkook was allowed to stand for a short assisted walk in the hallway. He acted like this was a heroic comeback stage. Jin said he looked like a newborn deer with legal problems. Jimin, still in his wheelchair, watched Jungkook take slow steps between J-Hope and a nurse. Taehyung walked nearby, not touching but ready. Suga recorded nothing for once. RM stood at the end of the hall with arms crossed, looking like he might cry from relief and deny it if asked. Jungkook made it 6 steps, then 8, then 10. He reached Jimin. He looked absurdly proud and exhausted. See, he said, not useless. Jimin rolled his eyes, but his heart hurt with tenderness. I never said you were. Jungkook lowered himself carefully into the chair beside him, breathing hard. After a moment, he whispered, when you woke up and asked for me. Jimin looked at him. Jungkook's eyes stayed on the floor. I didn't think I deserved that. Jimin answered softly. I didn't ask because you deserved it. Jungkook looked up. Then why? Jimin held his gaze. Because I needed you. Jungkook's face shifted, wounded and healed all at once. Before he could answer, RM's phone rang again. Every member in the hallway froze by instinct. RM checked the screen, unknown caller. The old fear moved through them, fast and familiar. Then RM answered on speaker without stepping away. New rules. Who is this? For a second, there was only static. Then a distorted voice spoke. You found Glasshouse. Suga moved closer immediately. Jin's posture changed. J-Hope's hand went at Taehyung's arm. Jungkook straightened despite the pain. Jimin's fingers curled around the wheelchair armrest. RM's voice was calm. Who are you? The voice replied. Someone who helped build it. The hallway turned cold. RM asked, why contact us now? The voice paused, then said, because Glasshouse was never designed just to predict you. Jimin felt Jungkook's hand find his. The voice continued, low and shaking for the first time. It was designed to replace you if you became uncontrollable. The call ended. No one moved. The hospital corridor, the company statement, the suspended names, the fragile relief, all of it seemed to tilt toward a darker door opening somewhere ahead. Jimin looked at Jungkook, and Jungkook looked back, both understanding at the same time that the cage had not only watched them, measured them, and tried to erase them. It had been learning how to build something without them. The hallway stayed silent after the call ended. Not peaceful silent, not the kind of silence that comes when danger is gone. This was the silence of 7 people realizing the enemy had only shown them the first floor of a building that went much deeper underground. RM still held the phone in his hand, screen dark now, unknown caller gone like a ghost. Jin was the first to move, stepping closer to Jimin and Jungkook without even thinking, like his body had already decided that whatever came next, the youngest two would not be left exposed again. Suga took the phone from RM gently, not asking permission, and began checking the call data with a face so still it looked carved from stone. J-Hope stood beside Taehyung, one hand still on his arm, but his eyes had changed. The fear was still there, but now it had hardened into something older, something tired of being gentle with people who called control protection. Taehyung stared down the corridor, jaw tight, as if he could already see the next door they would have to open. Jungkook's hand stayed locked around Jimin, warm now, trembling slightly from pain and adrenaline. Jimin looked at him and saw the same thought reflected back at him. Glasshouse was not finished. Han was not the ending. The board was not the deepest room. The consultant firm had not just collected their private lives to manage risk. It had studied them, predicted them, tested them, and maybe somehow prepared for a future where the 7 of them could be replaced by something easier to control. RM finally looked up from the dead phone. No more waiting, he said. Nobody disagreed. Jin's voice came low. We find out who built it. Suga closed the laptop with a soft click. And who they built it for. J-Hope looked toward the hospital window, where the city was glowing under late afternoon light like nothing had happened. The world thinks the scandal is ending. Taehyung's expression turned cold. Then the world is wrong. Jungkook tried to stand straighter, but Jimin held his hand tighter, stopping him before he pushed himself too far. For once, Jungkook listened. He looked down at Jimin, and something unspoken passed between them. Not a promise to protect alone. Not a promise to disappear for each other. A different promise. Stand with me. Jimin turned toward the others, weak, bruised, exhausted, but no longer willing to let anyone write him out of the story. Glasshouse wanted to predict us, he said quietly. Then let's become the one thing it can't calculate. RM nodded once. Jin moved behind them. Suga opened the evidence folder again. J-Hope took a breath that shook but did not break. Taehyung stepped forward. Jungkook's fingers tightened around Jimin's. And for the first time since Jimin woke up in that hospital bed asking for Jungkook, the 7 were not running from a secret. They were walking straight into it. But none of them saw the camera hidden inside the hallway smoke detector blink, read one final time before switching off.